Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Destined Antagonist. I refuse to annul the engagement. Chapter 21. Is the baby dragon fake? Not only Zhang Chenkin was confused, but all the geniuses were also confused. So, after all the fighting and even fighting against their own kind, it was all just a farce. A bucket of cold water was poured on everyone's faces, and gradually they all calmed down. Everyone fell silent for a moment, and then suddenly realized. Could it be that this baby dragon was created by Jong Zan to play a trick on them? After all, in their perspective, the appearance of the baby dragon was because of Jong Zan, and during the subsequent competition, Jong Zan disappeared and now even obtained the first place on the leaderboard. Everyone present was a loser, only Jong Zan was triumphant. Jong Zan. Zhang Chenkin also thought of this point. His face gradually darkened, his eyes became cold and flickered with a chilling light, and he gritted his teeth and blurted out, "I won't kill you, I swear." Zhang Minghao, Zhang Feng, Zhang Bei, and even all the geniuses had very ugly expressions at this moment, as if they had eaten a fly. If they had lost to Zhang Zan in a fair and square manner, they would have accepted it, but Zhang Zan won by using despicable means. Moreover, Zhang Zan was only in the nascent soul realm. Just the thought of being played around by Zhang Zan, who was only in the nascent soul realm, like a clown, made everyone even more annoyed, wishing to rush out and kill Zhang Zan right now, to wash away the shame on them. The geniuses of the Zhang Zan lineage looked at each other, their faces filled with astonishment and excitement. Truly worthy of being a young venerable. He actually played everyone with his own strength and easily obtained the first place on the leaderboard. Outside the 10,000 gorge, Zhang Zan also heard the voice of the mountain ancestor, blinked in surprise, and wondered if the trial had really ended. He couldn't help but look at the little girl, the Tian Shan child who was wearing the skin of a baby dragon. She was indeed full of wickedness, but her true abilities were not to be underestimated. Wow, the Tao medicine is in hand. Daddy, you promised me, after we go out, you'll take me to eat delicious food. The little girl stared straight at Zhang Zan, her big eyes shining. Zhang Zan fell silent for a moment, then nodded happily and said, "Don't worry, whatever you want to eat, we'll eat it." Immediately, following the guidance of the mountain ancestor, Zhang Zan held the little girl's hand and walked out of the barren land. Zhang Chenkin and the other geniuses had already come out ahead, and as Zhang Zan appeared, their gazes also fell on him, filled with resentment, malice, coldness, and various other emotions. If it weren't for the presence of the mountain ancestor, they would have already attacked Zhang Zan and torn him to pieces. As for the little girl beside Zhang Zan, they completely ignored her. One reason was that they all harbored hatred towards Zhang Zan and had no interest in the little girl. The other reason was that they couldn't see through the little girl, or rather, the rules around her concealed her presence, greatly reducing her own existence. Of course, without knowing the truth, who would associate a harmless little girl with the supreme divine beast like the baby dragon? The mountain ancestor and the ancient ancestor looked at this scene, their gazes intentionally or unintentionally falling on Zhang Zan, and they were also amazed. This kid actually successfully tamed the baby dragon and brought it out under the covetous eyes of all the geniuses. The key point was that he hid it so cleverly. This kid really understands the art of survival. The ancient ancestor coughed and transmitted his voice to the mountain ancestor with a somewhat mixed feeling. The mountain ancestor's mouth twitched. He knew that the ancient ancestor was referring to the one who said, "There is only a 98% chance of transcending tribulation, so there is no difference between rounding it up and seeking death." That person's talent was enough to rank in the top 5 among the Zhang family's geniuses of all generations, but he was extremely cautious. No, cautious couldn't even describe it, he was simply afraid of death. Clearly, he had already reached the peak of the true God realm early on, and was just one step away from transcending the tribulation and ascending to the realm of the true God, but he kept delaying the transcending tribulation. No matter how they persuaded him, he would just say, "Wait a little longer, wait a little longer." He even said with a straight face that he wanted to create the art of survival. Later, they all buried themselves in the divine tomb and lost contact with each other. It's also a good thing. Mountain ancestor pondered for a moment and slowly said, "Times have changed, a great era is approaching, we must be cautious to go further. Moreover, he has tamed a true dragon cub. If he becomes too ostentatious, it will easily attract the covetousness of those ancient sects and sacred places, which would be extremely detrimental to his own path. Ancient Ancestor nodded in agreement. Then, Mountain Ancestor scanned the crowd of geniuses and announced the trial results in a calm tone. 10th place on the scoreboard, Jong Zan, 49 points. The whole venue fell silent, and everyone's gaze turned to Jong Zan, who stood not far from Jong Zan. His face was uncertain, showing a hint of unwillingness and jealousy. Jong Zan, a genius of the Jong Zan lineage, with a bloodline concentration of 67, had just entered the spirit transformation realm. His talent was not considered outstanding, but among the 300 geniuses present, he could only be considered average. If the trial had continued normally, with Zhang Wuang's strength, he wouldn't even have been able to reach the top 200, let alone the top 10. But today, the trial had only lasted for 2 hours and ended quickly, giving Zhang Wang a big advantage. What a stroke of luck! Many geniuses cursed inwardly, feeling sour. It was just that the place where they landed was not good, and at the beginning, they didn't hunt many exotic beasts. Otherwise, with their strength, their scores would definitely be much higher than Zhang Wuang's. Zhang Wang himself was dumbfounded. He knew his own limitations. His foundation, talent, and strength were not outstanding. In this ancestral trial, his main responsibility was to protect Jong Zan and strive for the position of young clan leader for Jong Zan. As for obtaining spiritual medicine and opportunities, he didn't even dare to fantasize about it. But unexpectedly, with his meager 49 points, he actually ranked 10th on the scoreboard. Zhang Wang subconsciously slapped his head. Was he dreaming? But the jealous and furious gazes of the geniuses around him were real. Zhang Wuang's eyes widened, his eyes gleaming, and his whole body trembled with excitement. Without hesitation, he quickly came to Zhang Zan's side and bowed. Zhang Wang thanks young lord. If it weren't for young lord's victory in the scoreboard, ending the trial early, even if he had 10 more years to hunt exotic beasts, he wouldn't have been able to enter the top 10 on the scoreboard. Zhang Zan waved his hand to lift Zhang Wang up and chuckled, "This is your opportunity, no need to thank me." At this moment, everyone also reacted, and their expressions became even more unpleasant. It was all because of Zhang Zan, that little rat's shit, that ruined everyone's good fortune. Of course, they harbored resentment, but now they had more anticipation in their hearts. The trial ended early, and many people didn't have time to hunt exotic beasts. Perhaps, they also had a chance to be as lucky as Zhang Wang, enter the top 10 on the scoreboard, and qualify to enter the divine tomb to receive the ancestral inheritance. Among them, the most excited were the geniuses of the Zhang Zan lineage. Because during the chaotic battle at the bottom of the canyon, they were in a state of observation because they couldn't find young Lord Zhang Zan. Observing, since they had nothing better to do, they each found a few dormant exotic beasts at the bottom of the canyon, killed them, and took their essence blood to accumulate points. 9th place on the scoreboard, Zhang Ting. 8th place, Zhang Fengming. 7th, ... 6th place on the scoreboard, Zhang Hao, 65 points. Silence. Above the roaring river, the geniuses were unusually quiet, dumbfounded, and lost in thought. From 10th to 6th, all of them were geniuses of the Zhang Zan lineage. Zhang Ting, Zhang Fengming. Thank you, young lord. Zhang Ting and the other 3 prodigies who entered the top 10 of the leaderboard suppressed their excitement and bowed to Zhang Zan in gratitude. They were well aware that all of this was thanks to Zhang Zan, the young lord. Not only did the young lord outplay everyone and claim the first place on the leaderboard, but he also helped them enter the top 10. Their respect for Zhang Zan naturally soared. The other prodigies of the Zhang Zan lineage felt the same way. Although they didn't make it to the top 10 this time, with Zhang Wang and the others as precedents, it could be their turn next. At least they could be certain that following Zhang Zan, the young lord, would not lead to any mistreatment in the future. As for the others, their expressions were no longer describable as ugly. They looked as if they had lost their own mothers, their faces twisted with resentment and jealousy. 5th place on the leaderboard, Zhang Bei, 70 points. ... 2nd place on the leaderboard, Zhang Chenkin, 100 points. There were no surprises. 5th to 4th place on the leaderboard were indeed Zhang Bei, Zhang Feng, Zhang Haoming, and Zhang Chenkin. They were strong contenders for the position of young clan leader, with their strength clearly surpassing the others. However, the expressions of Jong Chenkin and the others did not change in the slightest upon entering the top 5 of the leaderboard. They continued to glare at Jong Zan with eyes full of murderous intent. Their faces were gloomy, their eyes cold. In their eyes, achieving a top 5 position on the leaderboard in this manner was like Jong Zan slapping them in the face, a great humiliation. This scene naturally caught the attention of the ancestor, but he didn't pay too much attention to it. Competition within controllable limits was a good thing. Immediately, the ancestor continued to announce, first place on the leaderboard, Jong Zan, with a score of 1,270,011 points. This score caused a huge uproar. Everyone was shocked. 1.27 million points. Are you kidding me? Everyone's gaze turned towards Jong Zan. Did he cheat? Come on, over 1 million points. Second place Jong Chenkin only has 100 points. Jong Zan had only reached the divine realm. How could he surpass Jong Chenkin, who was at the peak of the transcendent realm, by over 10,000 times? Everyone was dumbfounded, their incredulous gazes filled with deep doubt and suspicion. How did this guy cheat? Jong Chenkin's face grew even darker. He tightly gripped the mountain and river fan in his hand, suppressing the surging anger and killing intent in his heart. He had never regarded Jong Zan highly. Sending people to assassinate him was only a warning from the Holy Lord. In his eyes, Jong Zan, who had just reached the divine realm, was nothing more than an ant that could be easily crushed. But he never expected that this ant would repeatedly slap him in the face today. The prodigies of the Jong Zan lineage cheered at this moment. With honor comes glory. With a score over 1 million, the young lord completely dominated the field. Just based on this achievement, who would have the qualifications to compete with him in this ancestral land trial? The position of young clan leader undoubtedly belonged to Jong Zan, the young lord. This reaction made Jong Chenkin, Jong Minghao, and the others grind their teeth in hatred. They had never hated someone so much before. At this moment, the ancestor waved his hand and said, the top 10 on the leaderboard, enter the divine tomb. Buzz. The majestic divine tomb trembled slightly, emanating a layer of milky white divine radiance. It transformed into a towering gate that was 3,000 jong tall, with intricate and profound patterns, as if it contained some kind of great Tao principle, making people dare not look directly at it, fearing they would be lost within. The group of prodigies who didn't qualify, filled with deep jealousy, turned and left. There was nothing they could do except feel sour. It was better to make good use of the time before the trial ended and cultivate diligently. After all, the ancestral land is a small-dimensional world, not only rich in spiritual energy, but also easier to comprehend the laws of the great Tao. It can be said to be a holy place for cultivation. If one can break through the realm smoothly, it can be considered a gain and not return empty-handed. Jong Chenkin and others glanced coldly at Jong Zan, took a step forward, passed through the gate, and entered the divine tomb. Jong Wang and others gathered around Jong Zan, but Jong Zan didn't move, and they didn't dare to overstep and go ahead. Daddy, let's go in quickly. There's delicious food inside. So much, so much. The little girl tugged at Jong Zan, her big eyes staring at the gate of the divine tomb without blinking, saliva almost dripping. Delicious food, and so much of it. Jong Zan's eyelids twitched, feeling a sense of unease. The divine tomb is where the ancestors of the Jong family have been sleeping. Besides those almost decayed old ancestors, what else could there be? Sure enough, it's an old monster disguised as a true dragon cub. Wanting to devour the ancestors and restore oneself, huh? With me here, forget about it. Raising his right palm, a bloodline surged, forming a blood-colored restriction. Jong Zan summoned the divine ability that controlled the true dragon cub, held it in his hand, and solemnly said to the little girl, after entering, no matter what you want to eat, you must first get my permission, understand? The little girl looked at the restriction in Jong Zan's hand, feeling a bit scared, pouted, and unhappily said, understood. Jong Zan nodded in satisfaction, then supported the little girl and walked towards the gate. Jong Wang and the other 5 followed closely behind. As they stepped through the gate, a sense of weightlessness struck them. After a moment of dizziness, the scene before their eyes quietly changed. This was a desolate small world, with a heavy aura of decay permeating, as if it was the annihilation of a world, giving people a suffocating feeling. Only coffins made of gold and stone stood upright in the center of the world, heavy, ancient, and with supreme power, rushing towards them like ancient gods and demons, standing there quietly, towering into the sky, guarding the Jong family's longevity, guarding this world, silently resisting the erosion of time. Jong Zan and the others looked up, feeling a sense of insignificance. In their hearts, a deep sense of reverence surged. In order to protect the Jong family, these ancestors gave up the pursuit of the great Tao, gave up their own glory, and chose to bury their own bodies here, sleeping in endless darkness, silently resisting the erosion of time. When the Jong family needs them, they will awaken from their slumber, revive their decayed bodies, burn all that remains, and dedicate their spiritual power, physical bodies, divine souls, lives, and even the right to reincarnation. The virtual shadows of the mountain ancestor and the ancient ancestor appeared in front of everyone, faintly saying, "Later, I will guide your divine souls and resonate with the spiritual space left by the ancestors of past generations. There are imprints of their souls and the inheritance of the great Tao. Whether you can gain anything depends on your own opportunities." Yes, everyone respectfully saluted. The mountain ancestor nodded slightly, his old gaze sweeping over everyone, finally falling on Jong Zan. There were a total of 10 outstanding individuals on this trip, and this child had the highest probability of becoming a monster. Perhaps he could gain the favor of even older ancestors and obtain a more powerful inheritance. "Stay focused and let's begin," the mountain ancestor said in a deep voice, and at the same time, he pointed to the sky, causing the small world to dim. Buzz. Suddenly, a milky white light descended from the depths of the profound sky. Like the Milky Way in the 9 heavens, endless and continuous. Dim and obscure rules and the great Tao flickered beneath it. Jong Zan and the others sat cross-legged, focusing their minds, activating their divine souls, releasing their consciousness, and attempting to touch this light. After half an incense stick's worth of time, Zhong Wuang's bloodline began to surge on its own, and from his enchanting blood, mysterious rules flickered, resonating with the milky white light. Buzz. A crisp sword hum sounded. From within the milky white light, a faint figure walked out. The figure held a long sword in both hands, looked at Zhong Wang, nodded approvingly, and said lightly, "I have a Tao-level sword technique, which I will give to you. I hope you can comprehend it well. Thank you, ancestors, for bestowing the inheritance." Zhong Wang opened his eyes, respectfully bowed, and then began to accept the inheritance. A figure nodded slightly and transformed into a hazy ball of light, surging into Zhong Wuang's body. Boom! A corresponding coffin trembled violently. The heavy sword intent slowly spread out, like a towering mountain, suppressing the heavens and earth. Then, a strand of sword Tao principles flowed out from the coffin, like gushing spring water, pouring into Zhong Wuang's body. The heavy sword Tao aura around Zhong Wuang's body also visibly accumulated. "This is too fast, isn't it?" The ancient ancestor's mouth twitched, somewhat helpless. To resonate with the spiritual space, attract the favor of the ancestors, and accept the inheritance, it was not that the faster, the better. On the contrary, the slower it was, the more opportunity there was to attract the soul imprint of the older Zhong ancestors and obtain a more powerful inheritance. Otherwise, like Zhong Wang, one could only attract the ancestors of the recent generations, those who were sleeping in the coffins. It couldn't be said that those people in the coffins were not strong, but their inheritance was not strong enough. After all, he and the mountain ancestor had already reached their limit. At most, it was only a saint-grade inheritance. But you should know that in the spiritual space, there were soul imprints of ancestors from various generations, and the inheritances they contained were mostly saint-grade, and there were even inheritances above saint-grade. It was even said that the inheritance of the progenitor was among them. To only obtain a Tao-grade inheritance like Zhong Wang, it was a bit of a waste of this opportunity. But there was no other way. With Zhong Wuang's talent and strength, he originally did not qualify to enter the divine tomb and accept the inheritance. It could only be said, it was a twist of fate. The mountain ancestor also smiled helplessly. "You know the qualifications of these few individuals in your heart. Being able to obtain the inheritance is not easy, there is no need to demand too much. Let's see what kind of inheritance those few can obtain." As he spoke, his gaze had already fallen on Jong Zan, with a hint of anticipation. The ancient ancestor was the same. In their eyes, with the qualifications of the four, obtaining a saint-grade inheritance should not be difficult, but above saint-grade, perhaps only Jong Zan, who had tamed a true dragon cub, had some hope. However, the mountain ancestor and the ancient ancestor did not notice that the little girl sitting next to Jong Zan, at this moment, her big eyes were staring at Zhong Wuang's sword Dao inheritance, her eyes shining and drooling. "Daddy, I want to eat that." The mischievous little girl said this in her heart, and it was transmitted to Jong Zan's mind through their special connection. Jong Zan was currently using his spiritual sense to sense the spiritual space. He was stunned by the little girl's words, and after a moment, his face turned black, and he sternly shouted, "That cannot be eaten." "Oh." The little girl pouted unhappily and endured it. At this time, Jong Zan was already ascending in the form of his spiritual sense in the milky white radiance. This was the spiritual space, where there were the soul imprints of the ancestors. But for some reason, whenever Jong Zan passed by a figure, that figure would take 3 steps back, bow respectfully, and then promptly disappear, as if they were avoiding him. For heaven's sake, with my bloodline concentration of 95, not yet in the spirit transformation stage, having comprehended 3 great paths, and possessing the indestructible thunder body, with this talent and potential, you can't find a second one in the entire celestial wonders realm, and yet you still don't think highly of me. Jong Zan's face was dark, and he felt very unhappy. But he didn't know that this situation was because his talent was too strong. Originally, these matters were supposed to be informed in advance, but the mountain ancestor and the ancient ancestor had been asleep for a long time and forgot about this. After all, expediting the geniuses to accept the inheritance was not their task. It was only because the Great Era was approaching and a monstrous genius with a bloodline regression of 95 had appeared in the clan that they decided to come out and take a look. In the spiritual space, Jong Zan had been unable to get a response from the soul imprints of the ancestors, so he could only continue walking with a black face. 100 Jong, 500 Jong, 1000 Jong, 2000 Jong, 5000 Jong. Seeing that he had already walked 2/3 of the entire spiritual space, but still hadn't received any response from the ancestors, they all disappeared as soon as they saw him, as if they were seeing a cat as a mouse. Jong Zan was at a loss and felt exhausted. But the frustration didn't end there. The voice of the little girl occasionally entered his mind, asking him if she could eat this or that. Through their connection, he roughly understood what the little girl wanted to eat. Great Dao inheritances. From the sword Dao inheritance that Zhong Wang obtained at the beginning, to Zhong Ting and Zhong Fengming. Come on, these were all the geniuses of his line. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were his core team, his little brothers. It was not easy for them to obtain the ancestral inheritance, and you want to eat it. So, Jong Zan refused all of them. Until, the little girl pointed at the quasi-saint grade sword Dao inheritance that Zhong Bei obtained and asked if she could eat it. He couldn't help but waver. Step by step, if Zhong Bei lost the inheritance, then he would be far ahead of Zhong Bei. The competition for the position of young clan leader naturally could eliminate Zhong Bei from the start. Moreover, he hasn't obtained the inheritance himself, so naturally he cannot let Zhong Bei obtain the inheritance and surpass him. But just as Jong Zan was about to nod and allow the girl to eat, he hesitated again. Although there is strong competition, they are all members of the Zhong family at the end of the day, sharing the same bloodline. It goes against his true intentions to coldly destroy the other's chance of inheritance. Going against his true intentions, his thoughts become muddled, which will inevitably affect his Dao heart and further hinder his path. Isn't this harming others without benefiting oneself? Jong Zan pondered for a moment and ultimately gave up, warning the girl not to eat. Following that, Zhong Feng obtained the saint-grade body refining technique, Zhong Minghao obtained the saint-grade killing technique, and Jong Zan did the same, preventing the girl from obtaining them. The girl looked at the delicious food and cried with hunger. But fearing the prohibition in Jong Zan's hands, the girl could only grit her teeth and endure. Intel. Zhong Chenkin's bloodline surged, the yin and yang energies circulated, and his spiritual consciousness soared in the spiritual space, taking big strides forward. He walked for half an hour and arrived at a position of 3000 Zhong. A heavy pressure and vast aura suppressed him like a towering divine mountain. Zhong Chenkin's spiritual consciousness trembled violently, cracking with signs of collapse. After struggling for a long time, Jong Chenkin stopped in his tracks with a serious expression. He gave up moving forward. He had reached his limit. If he continued forward, his spiritual consciousness would inevitably collapse, and his divine soul would suffer backlash. At that time, not only would he be unable to obtain the inheritance, but he would also harm his foundation. He had to stop at the right moment. 3,000 Jong is enough. Jong Chenkin exhaled a breath of turbid air and confidently murmured, with Jong Minghao's talent, he can at most reach 2,500 Jong. As for Jong Zan, HMPH, Jong Chenkin sneered. Jong Zan indeed had the highest bloodline concentration among the people present, but his cultivation was only at the divine realm. It was estimated that even reaching 1,000 Jong would be difficult for him. At the position of 3,000 Jong, I will definitely be able to obtain the saint grade inheritance, and even one of the more powerful ones among the saint grade. And Jong Zan, it's probably difficult for him to even obtain the quasi-saint grade inheritance. The position of the young clan leader will definitely be mine, Jong Chenkin said confidently. At this moment, an ancestor figure dressed in Taoist robes walked out, emitting a faint holy aura and an unparalleled presence that made people tremble. The figure looked at Jong Chenkin and nodded in satisfaction, carrying the yin and yang energies. You can inherit my sacred art. I am Zhang Feng, who once created a sacred art called the Taiji Palace diagram. I now wish to pass it on to you. Are you willing? Jong Chenkin widened his eyes, instantly filled with excitement. Zhang Feng, the ancestor of the Zhang family. The one who shook the world in the late ancient era, killing 3,000 true gods with his Taiji Palace diagram. It was said that this ancestor had already comprehended the secrets of the great Tao, stepped into the realm of true gods, and walked out of the celestial wonders realm. Unexpectedly, he had also left behind an inheritance in the spiritual space. Without any hesitation, Jong Chenkin quickly cupped his hands and bowed. I am Jong Chenkin, a descendant of the Zhang family. Thank you, ancestor, for bestowing your teachings. Zhang Feng nodded and pointed, causing the yin and yang energies to transform into a Taiji fish, flying out of the spiritual space towards Jong Chenkin. This is the Taiji Palace diagram. The mountain ancestor and ancient ancestor were both startled and amazed. The mountain ancestor exclaimed, Zhang Feng's sacred art inheritance ranks among the top in the entire celestial wonders realm's saint-grade inheritances of the major Tao sects. Mastering this inheritance will increase this child's potential by at least 30%. In the future, he may have a chance to challenge the title of a monstrous genius. While the two ancestors were astonished, the girl stared at Jong Chenkin's inheritance, her eyes turning red and drooling all over the floor. Delicious. It was even more delicious than all the food before. Daddy, I want to eat it. The girl's voice echoed in Jong Zan's mind. She had been rejected time and time again, and could only endure each time. She had vaguely understood that Daddy didn't want her to eat these things. But this time, she really couldn't hold back anymore. She was hungry, very hungry. To her surprise, Daddy gave her a decisive and straightforward reply this time. Eat it all. Almost in an instant, before Jong Zan could even finish saying the word, eat, the little girl had already made her move. Her chubby little hands waved in a strange trajectory. One after another, nearly transparent rules rippled out, as if an invisible hand tightly grasped the Taiji fish that carried the inheritance and evolution of the great Tao. Buzz. After a useless struggle, the Taiji fish suddenly disappeared. It vanished completely, as if it had never appeared before. Jong Chenkin's eyes suddenly opened wide, filled with disbelief. What about his inheritance? This was Zhang Feng's saint-grade inheritance. As long as he comprehended it, his strength would increase by at least 50%. By then, he could sweep away everyone present and seize the position of the young clan leader. It would be as easy as picking up something with his hand. But, why did the inheritance suddenly disappear? Jong Chenkin couldn't accept it, and he couldn't tolerate it. Quickly getting up, he rushed to the front of the mountain ancestor and ancient ancestor like a madman, crying like a child who had been wronged, Ancestors, my inheritance is gone. The mountain ancestor and ancient ancestor exchanged glances, their eyes filled with complexity and helplessness. The true dragon cub had plundered Jong Chenkin's inheritance, and its divine ability was astonishing. Even they were shocked, and its actions were extremely secretive. However, the huge gap in cultivation level was there for all to see, and they naturally saw everything clearly. But what could they do? Ask the true dragon cub to hand over the inheritance. Didn't they see that the true dragon cub was hugging the taiji fish and happily eating it? It was enjoying itself to the fullest. Even if the other party handed it over, it would probably only be left with a few remnants. A severely damaged saint-grade inheritance might not even be comparable to a Dao-grade inheritance. What use was there in getting it back? Furthermore, that was the true dragon cub, the ancestral guardian beast left by the second-generation ancestor to the Zhang family. Its preciousness and importance far exceeded that of a holy weapon. And Zhang Chengqin, he was just one of the 4 geniuses of the Zhang family in this generation, and his talent couldn't even be considered monstrous. The mountain ancestor and ancient ancestor knew very well who was more important. But as ancestors, they really couldn't just watch their descendant, who was a genius, return empty-handed. After pondering for a moment, the mountain ancestor slowly spoke. According to the rules of the ancestral land, each genius who enters the divine tomb only has one chance to resonate with the spiritual space and obtain the ancestor's inheritance. They can only inherit one inheritance. If they cannot gain the favor of the ancestor, they will never have a second chance. But your situation is indeed quite special. With your talent, you should have obtained one of the ancestor's inheritances. I will make an exception and extradite you to the spiritual space again to obtain an inheritance. Upon hearing this, Zhang Chengqin's eyes drooped slightly, and he didn't show too much excitement. On the contrary, he felt quite aggrieved. The Taiji Palace inheritance he had just obtained was also an extremely powerful existence among the saint-grade inheritances. The key point was that it was extremely suitable for him, and his cultivation would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. Entering the spiritual space again, even if he obtained another saint-grade inheritance, it was probably difficult to compare with the Taiji Palace inheritance. But, since things had come to this point, Zhang Chengqin also understood that the strange disappearing inheritance was probably impossible to retrieve. Now, he could only obtain a new great Dao inheritance. Thank you, mountain ancestor. Zhang Chengqin cupped his hands in gratitude. Immediately, he sat cross-legged once again, releasing his spiritual consciousness and entering the spiritual space, going against the current to seek the response of the ancestor's soul imprint. Could it be Jong Zan's doing? The ancient ancestor looked at the little girl intentionally or unintentionally and asked the mountain ancestor in a low voice. The mountain ancestor looked at the little girl, his gaze deep and focused, staring for a long time before slowly speaking. Jong Zan is one of the 4 geniuses after all. She should have her bottom line and will abide by it. It should be this true dragon cub acting on its own. It just hatched and lacks energy. It urgently needs to replenish it. She should be hungry. The ancient ancestor nodded thoughtfully. The little girl devoured the taiji fish, absorbing the great Dao energy within it and replenishing herself. She was sealed in a bronze tripod by her second-generation ancestors, undergoing the process of refining and transformation in a secret place of 10,000 beasts. This not only greatly delayed the time of her birth, but also seriously depleted her own innate qi, causing most of her bloodline and the true dragon inheritance rooted in her bloodline to be forced into self-sealing. Therefore, she urgently needs a large amount of Dao energy to gradually unseal her bloodline and obtain the bloodline inheritance. As a result, she is very hungry. As the Dao energy in the taiji fish was devoured, a faint golden light naturally rippled around the girl's body. It can be seen that the girl's left arm, which is as delicate as a lotus node, has layers of profound light and shadow flickering, sometimes bright and sometimes dim. That is, dragon scales. After devouring the taiji fish, the girl reluctantly unsealed a layer of her bloodline and obtained a true dragon inheritance. At the same time, Zhong Zan's mind also had a slight disturbance. A mysterious insight surged in his heart. In an instant, he seemed to grasp an inherited technique. Yin and yang qi surged in Zhong Zan's palm, weaving into an almost illusory taiji fish. It was the saint-grade inheritance of Zhong Feng's taiji palace diagram. The girl only absorbed the Dao energy in the inheritance, and as for the insight of the inheritance, it was far inferior to her true dragon inheritance. For her, it was like a chicken rib. Instead of wasting time cultivating, it was better to give it to Zhong Zan through their special connection. Zhong Zan couldn't help but be surprised. Letting the heavenly mountain child devour Zhang Chengqin's Dao inheritance actually had such benefits. Although he no longer had Tao energy, it would be much more difficult to comprehend, and his early progress would become very slow. But this was still a saint-grade inheritance. Who would complain about picking up such a bargain? Moreover, obtaining the inheritance was unique, which meant that each person could only obtain one inheritance in this spiritual space, and he directly broke through this restriction in this peculiar way. The most important thing was that this was originally Jong Chenkin's inheritance. In the divine tomb, with mountain ancestor and ancient ancestor present, he should not have had the opportunity to kill Jong Chenkin, but it was still a happy thing to discuss the other party and let him return empty-handed. Well done. Jong Zan rarely praised the girl. After that, Jong Zan put this matter aside, looked at the spiritual space that was faintly visible at the end, and frowned, showing a few traces of distress. He had already reached a height of 8,000 Jong, but the soul imprints of those old ancestors were still avoiding him like playing hide and seek. He could only continue forward. After half an incense stick of time. 10,000 2,000 Jong. A figure dressed in white robes appeared within Jong Zan's line of sight. Seeing this, Jong Zan breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Finally, there was an ancestor who didn't avoid him. Jong Zan, disciple of the Jong family, pays respects to the ancestor. Jong Zan bowed respectfully. The figure in white robes looked at Jong Zan without speaking. In his hazy eyes, from the beginning of indifference, it gradually became solemn and complicated, and finally, he shook his head helplessly, showing a sense of regret. I am Zhong Meng, known as Mountain Ancestor. I obtained the mountain and sea secret art from a sage outside the world and recorded it here, intending to pass it on to the descendants of the Zhong family. The soul imprint of Mountain Ancestor said with complexity. Jong Zan looked at Mountain Ancestor in surprise. No wonder he had a faint sense of familiarity. It turned out that the other party was the soul imprint of Mountain Ancestor. With this thought, Jong Zan couldn't help but fall into contemplation. As the first person of the ancient Zhong family, Mountain Ancestor's realm should not be as high as those old ancestors before the ancient times, but his Tao inheritance appeared at this 10,000 2,000 Zhong position. This meant that Mountain Ancestor's inheritance should be extremely powerful. It should be noted that when he was at the 10,000 Zhong position, he had seen the soul imprints of several old ancestors. Their aura was extremely ancient, giving him the feeling that they were even before the ancient times. Mountain Ancestor's inheritance is probably already at the peak of the saint grade. Jong Zan speculated in his heart. Immediately, Jong Zan no longer hesitated, bowed deeply, and sincerely said, "Please bestow the inheritance, Mountain Ancestor." Mountain Ancestor shook his head complicatedly, sighed, and said, "Your bloodline density has returned to the ancestral level, reaching 95, already comparable to the second-generation ancestors. Although my inheritance is not bad, if it is passed on to you, it will only delay your talent for no reason. Moreover, I, the original body, am only at the peak of the true God realm, and I am not qualified to be your master. You continue forward." After speaking, the soul imprint of Mountain Ancestor waved his sleeve and disappeared sadly. Jong Zan looked up in astonishment, watching as the Mountain Ancestor disappeared, feeling a moment of absent-mindedness. Understood. I understand it all now. So, those ancestors before didn't look down on him, but rather felt that their own heritage was not worthy of him, and they were too ashamed to appear. Jong Zan's mouth twitched, suddenly feeling a sense of unreality. No, it's not that you think you're not worthy, but at least say something. Fortunately, this young master didn't underestimate himself and give up easily, otherwise, with such talent as this young master, wouldn't you have hindered him? So, in this place, my bloodline concentration can't be concealed at all. Jong Zan also realized this at this moment. He became alert in his heart. In this place of inheritance, if his bloodline was exposed, then it was exposed. These old ancestors would definitely not harm him, but after leaving, he must be more cautious. Who knows if those who harbor ill intentions towards him have special detection methods? Not to mention others, just Jong Chenkin's line alone has become mortal enemies. If the other party knew that his bloodline concentration had reached 95, they would definitely do everything to destroy him. I need to quickly find a technique that can conceal myself. Jong Zan pondered. Afterwards, Jong Zan continued to move upwards. Based on the information imprinted in the soul of the Mountain Ancestor, Jong Zan had basically confirmed that the higher the Tao inheritance existed, the stronger it would be. Moreover, his bloodline concentration of 95 was equivalent to having a pass, allowing him to move forward without any burden or pressure. In other words, while others enter and are chosen by the ancestors to receive the inheritance, he is the one choosing the ancestors and selecting the inheritance. What else is there to say? Just be awesome. Jong Zan was no longer depressed, happily walking forward as if strolling through a grand garden. At this moment, the voice of the little girl sounded again. Daddy, can we eat that? Through their mental connection, Jong Zan learned what the little girl wanted to eat, Jong Chenkin's Tao inheritance. This fool, how did he obtain another inheritance? Jong Zan was somewhat puzzled. And it seemed to be a saint-grade inheritance. Eat. Jong Zan responded without any psychological burden, straightforwardly. Then, Jong Chenkin once again opened his eyes, his bloodshot eyes filled with astonishment and anger. The Tao inheritance he had obtained through great hardships had disappeared again. Unlike the first time, he entered the spiritual world once more, the pressure multiplied, and each step forward became extremely difficult. Coupled with the large amount of mental energy he had already expended, his search for the inheritance while moving against the current was naturally extremely arduous. Even so, he pushed himself to the limit and reached a position 2,300 Zhong high, where he gained the favor of an ancestor who excelled in assassination and received his inheritance. It was a special saint-grade inheritance, not for attack or defense, but an extremely elusive concealment technique. According to the words of that ancestor, this secret technique originated from a divine and demonic site, possibly a divine and demonic inheritance. If it could be cultivated to its peak, even existences above true gods would be unable to see through its illusions. Naturally, this secret technique couldn't compare to the Taiji Palace diagram, but its elusive nature surpassed the majority of saint-grade inheritances in terms of effectiveness. Jong Chenkin was ecstatic about this. But he never expected, just as he was about to accept the inheritance, it disappeared once again. It was exactly the same as before. Jong Chenkin was going crazy now. No, he was already crazy. Thump. Jong Chenkin knelt in front of the mountain ancestor, his face filled with resentment, grievance, and an almost uncontrollable rage. He pleaded, I beg the mountain ancestor to give the disciple another chance to resonate with the spiritual space. After all, he had already experienced it once, so he knew very well that when the Tao inheritance suddenly disappeared, it was impossible to retrieve it. Instead of wasting time investigating, it was better to beg the mountain ancestor to let him try again. After all, there is a time limit to entering the divine tomb. He can't return empty-handed, can he? Throughout the history of the Zhong family, such a scene has never occurred. Even the worst genius would at least obtain a Tao-level inheritance. He doesn't want to become that exception, forever pinned to the pillar of shame in the Zhong family. The ancient ancestor looked at Jong Chenkin with some pity, then looked at the mountain ancestor, as if wanting to say something. However, the mountain ancestor subtly shook his head, stopping the other party, then looked at Jong Chenkin and sighed, helplessly saying, there is a time for everything in one's destiny. If it is not meant to be, do not force it. This is the last chance. Thank you, mountain ancestor. I am deeply grateful. Jong Chenkin kowtowed heavily, then once again activated his spiritual consciousness and entered the spiritual world. The ancient ancestor glanced at the dragon hatchling that was feasting, his brows furrowed, his face showing anger, and he asked in a deep voice, this is obviously Jong Zan causing trouble in secret. Why did the mountain ancestor turn a blind eye and let him run wild? With a faint glance at the ancient ancestor, the mountain ancestor revealed a smile. Under his calm tone, there was an uncontrollable excitement, my soul imprint has seen Jong Zan. The ancient ancestor's expression froze. He knew very well how terrifying the mountain ancestor's inheritance was, comparable to the peak of the saint grade. It was precisely because the inheritance was extremely powerful that the mountain ancestor's soul imprint could surpass many old ancestors and be at a position of 12,000 Zhong. Jong Zan actually reached 12,200 Zhong. The ancient ancestor's pupils contracted, his face filled with surprise, bloodline concentration of 95. The mountain ancestor smiled and nodded, with a hint of emotion, this kid is really good at hiding. Bloodline concentration of 95, taming a true dragon hatchling, and obtaining your inheritance. The more the ancient ancestor spoke, the more excited he became. His whole body trembled, and he said with great excitement, he will definitely be able to dominate profound heaven in the future and step into the realm of true gods. The mountain ancestor's face darkened, and he sighed lightly. Bloodline concentration of 95, talent on par with the second-generation ancestors. How can my meager inheritance be worthy? Moreover, with my current cultivation level, do I have the qualifications to be his master? Upon hearing this, the ancient ancestor was stunned and looked at the mountain ancestor in astonishment. You didn't pass on your inheritance. The mountain ancestor shook his head. No, my soul imprint allowed him to move forward and seek a more powerful inheritance. With his aged eyes slightly raised, the mountain ancestor looked towards the spiritual space, his gaze following the milky white light, all the way up, with hope in his eyes. With this kid's talent, he might have a chance to explore the ancestral inheritance at the end. The ancient ancestor's heart trembled upon hearing this, and he also cast his gaze in that direction, filled with anticipation. If Jong Zan truly obtained the ancestral inheritance, with his talent and potential, in the future, he would achieve an invincible reputation, ascend to the realm of true gods, and step out of profound heaven. It was only a matter of time. There is even a certain chance to achieve immortality, attain a holy name, and become a saint who is revered for a long time. Even if it is the lost immortal throne from the distant ancient era, Jong Zan also has a chance to explore it. And at this moment, in the spiritual space, calculating the days, concealing fate, cultivating to the peak, hiding the sky with one leaf, the heavenly concealment secret technique. After digesting the newly obtained inheritance for a while, Jong Zan couldn't help but show a surprised expression. This is a very mysterious, secretive, and powerful hidden inheritance. Its power may not be as great as the majority of saint-grade inheritances, but its effectiveness is extremely powerful. In a certain sense, it surpasses most saint-grade inheritances. Most importantly, he needs this inheritance too much right now. Even if it is only at the beginning of cultivation, it can hide his own cultivation level, not exceeding 2 major realms higher than his own, making it impossible to see through. It can also conceal his bloodline. Even true God-level experts cannot perceive the concentration of his bloodline without probing with their divine sense. This is simply a dream come true. Could Jong Chenkin be my lucky star? Jong Zan smiled playfully. Leaving the gains behind, Jong Zan continued forward. These inheritances do not have corresponding guidance of the great Tao energy, so it is not easy to comprehend and integrate them. He can only wait until after the trial is over and then seclude himself to slowly comprehend and cultivate. On this journey, he saw dozens of figures of ancient ancestors, all of them powerful saint-grade inheritances, and even some inheritances above the saint grade. These ancestors, like the soul imprint of the mountain ancestor, marveled at the concentration of Jong Zan's bloodline. Although they had the intention to pass on their inheritances, they were also self-aware and believed that their inheritances were a waste of Jong Zan's time. They could only hide their deep regrets and advise Jong Zan to continue forward. Soon, half an hour passed. Jong Zan had already arrived at a height of 18,000 jong, and the end of the spiritual space had also appeared in his line of sight. There, perhaps the ancestral inheritance exists. And at this moment, a burly figure walked out, exuding an unparalleled domineering aura, making people's hearts tremble. Clearly just a soul imprint, merely standing there, it gave people a feeling of holding up the sky with one hand and extinguishing the stars, as if even an endless galaxy would bow down at his feet. Descendant of the Jong family, are you willing to accept my inheritance? Jong Zan stopped and looked at the figure in front of him, calmly asking, may I ask for the name and inheritance bestowed by the ancestor? The robust figure looked at Jong Zan indifferently and laughed heartily. My name is Jong Zan, also known as the True Destiny Master. With my inherited life-stealing technique, bestowed upon me by an immortal, I can seize lives, defy fate, reshape my constitution, and achieve an unparalleled physique. In my youth, my blood concentration was less than 50, and my talent was extremely poor. It was difficult for me to comprehend the great Tao, and I might not have been able to reach the profound earth realm in my lifetime. However, by chance, I entered a mysterious realm of immortals and observed the murals left by immortals. I obtained the life-stealing technique bestowed by an immortal, which allows me to seize the essence of all living beings, the power of heaven and earth, the essence of the sun and moon, the foundation of gods and demons, the power of the great Tao, and the life force of all beings. I reshaped my foundation, forged an unparalleled physique, and advanced with great strides on the path to immortality. The true Destiny Master stared at Jong Zan with burning eyes and suppressed his excitement. In my youth, I had extremely poor talent and could be considered a waste. But with the life-stealing technique, even I could achieve immortality. Your blood concentration is 95, making you an extraordinary genius. If you cultivate the life-stealing technique, you will be invincible, dominating all realms and challenging the position of immortality. Furthermore, the Jong family's bloodline is both a blessing and a shackle. The bloodline inheritance has been gradually weakening. If the entire Jong family relies solely on bloodline, it will only decline and wither away. I believe you have also realized this. In ancient times, the Jong family was extremely powerful, with numerous geniuses whose blood concentration exceeded 80. But what about now? There are only a few individuals with a blood concentration above 70. You have great luck, allowing your bloodline to revert. But the future generations of the Jong family may not produce another person with such magnificent luck as you. The true Destiny Master looked at Jong Zan and spoke with deep meaning. With your talent, you will undoubtedly become the next clan leader and take charge of the Jong family. For the future of the Jong family, you should consider making changes and finding a new path for the family. The life-stealing technique is one such path. The true Destiny Master's words left Jong Zan stunned. The life-stealing technique, finding a new path for the Jong family. Jong Zan felt that something was not quite right, but due to his limited understanding of the great Tao, he couldn't articulate his doubts. Jong Zan fell into deep thought. What are you still considering? The true Destiny Master's tone became urgent. With your talent, if you cultivate the life-stealing technique, you will progress by leaps and bounds. Surpassing the ancestors and even becoming an immortal is definitely not a problem. Wait a minute. This feeling, Jong Zan's heart skipped a beat, and he instinctively took a few steps back, looking at the true Destiny Master with a more cautious gaze. Recalling the tumultuous years of his life, every time he thought his protagonist's halo was about to activate and fortune was about to come, it was always like this, always this feeling. Sometimes, intuition could save one's life. After all, the image of the Thunder Ancestor from a few days ago was still vivid in his mind. That old immortal promised him numerous benefits, but it was all to take over his body, wasn't it? Fortunately, the Thunder Ancestor was only left with a wisp of remnant soul and was killed by Jong Zan using various means. Otherwise, he wouldn't be called Jong Zan now. This true Destiny Master's cultivation level during his lifetime was obviously much higher than that of the Thunder Ancestor. If he wanted to take over Jong Zan's body, with Jong Zan's current abilities. At this thought, Jong Zan couldn't help but shudder. Then he would probably be waiting for death. Jong Zan trusted his intuition and pretended to be hesitant as he said, "Thank you for your kind offer, but I want to try to gain the favor of the ancestor and bring back the ancestor's inheritance." Ever since the departure of the second-generation ancestor from the Celestial Wonders realm, the ancestral inheritance in the Jong family has been interrupted. It is said that within the spiritual space of this inheritance place, the ancestral inheritance still exists, but no one has been able to obtain it and bring it back. As the true heir said, the bloodline inheritance becomes diluted and weakened from generation to generation. Unless one is extremely lucky, very few disciples can revert their bloodline, and even if they can, they are far from being able to obtain the ancestral inheritance. Of course, Jong Zan's bloodline concentration is as high as 95, comparable to the second-generation ancestor, so naturally, he has obtained the ticket to enter. As for whether he can succeed, that remains to be seen. You rejected me. The true heir was stunned, finding it hard to believe his own ears. His inheritance is immortal arts, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it may not even be comparable to the ancestral inheritance. With my inheritance, surpassing the ancestors is only a matter of time. But if you insist on pursuing the ancestral inheritance, even if you succeed, your limit will only be comparable to the ancestors. The true heir was somewhat angry, but still patiently advised, you should consider it carefully. The Jong family disciples have become worse with each generation. It has been a full 5 million years since their souls were imprinted here, and yet not a single person has been able to come here. The young man in front of him is the first. He cannot miss this opportunity. He does not want to wait another 5 million years. Moreover, even if he can wait, with the current situation of the Jong family, it is uncertain whether they can continue for another 5 million years. So, he wants to pass on the deadly technique to Jong Zan, let Jong Zan use it to change the Jong family and protect its future. But the more urgent the true heir is, the more cautious and guarded Jong Zan becomes. Thank you for your kindness, but I would like to try again, Jong Zan said without looking back. The true heir watched Jong Zan's figure and his expression changed. The place of inheritance was created by the ancestor and contains supreme order and rules. Even if he wants to forcefully bestow the inheritance upon Jong Zan, he will be blocked by the rules. Fine, I hope this kid can break free from the shackles of bloodline and emulate the ancestors, and continue the luck of the Jong family for millions of years. The true heir sighed helplessly and his figure slowly dissipated. Congratulations on breaking a set rule. If you accept the inheritance of the deadly technique, your bloodline will continue to be tempered, your talent will decrease, but the curse will not be lifted. In the end, due to insufficient talent, you will be unable to break through to become a true god and will perish when your lifespan is exhausted. You have rejected the true heir's inheritance and gained a portion of his battle insights. The prompt appeared before Jong Zan's eyes, and he was momentarily stunned. The corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily. Good news. The true heir was just a little impatient, but he is a good person, no, a good ancestor. He genuinely wanted to pass on the deadly technique to him, unlike that scoundrel Lei Zhu. Bad news. The true heir's inheritance conflicts with his own destiny and will continue to diminish his talent. Please, the lifespan of this young master is less than 300 years. If you further diminish my talent, how the hell am I supposed to break through to become a true god? If I cultivate the deadly technique, won't I end up killing myself? Even better news. He cautiously rejected it and gained a small reward. The true heir's battle insights, although only a portion, are still from a powerhouse above the realm of true gods. Battle insights are extremely valuable. After absorbing and digesting them all, his foundation will at least increase by 2 or 3%. Ah, what kind of situation is this? Jong Zan continued forward, muttering to himself, other protagonists get whatever they want, they even have the whole world's good things rushing to their doorstep. Why is it my turn now? Finally, I have an opportunity, but I have to be cautious and see if it's a trap. Continuing upwards, the obvious signs of the ancestral heritage branding have significantly diminished. When I first entered, there was probably one every 10 Jong, but after reaching 3,000 Jong, it would take 100 Jong to encounter one. And now, it might take 1,000 Jong to see a figure representing the heritage. Along the way, I encountered 2 ancient ancestors. Both of them were humble and not as arrogant as a true destined person. They honestly informed Jong Zan that their heritage, in terms of his 95% bloodline concentration, was somewhat insignificant and not worth mentioning. They encouraged Jong Zan to continue forward and try to bring back the ancestral heritage to the Jong family. After all, the era when the ancestor was present was the peak of the Jong family's prosperity. Even a saint with a long lifespan would have to bow down. If Jong Zan could reproduce the ancestral heritage and reach the same supreme height as the ancestor, the Jong family would surely restore its ancient reputation as a long-lived immortal clan and dominate the profound heaven, watching over all realms. After about the time it takes for 2 incense sticks to burn, Jong Zan arrived at a position of 20,000 Jong. This is the end of the spiritual space. On the solid wall, which resembled a substantial entity under the milky white light, there were inscriptions of profound patterns, containing depth and antiquity, as if the origin of the great Tao, captivating people. Is this the end? Jong Zan was a little confused. There wasn't even a figure, let alone the so-called ancestral heritage. Even if it was just an ordinary heritage, there was nothing here. Am I going to become a clown? Jong Zan's mouth twitched. It was already certain that Jong Chenkin would return empty-handed, and after going out, he would most likely be nailed to the pillar of shame in the Jong family for generations to come. But he didn't want to accompany Jong Chenkin in being celebrated. Don't mess around. Jong Zan frowned, clenched his fists, and hammered the milky white wall. Buzz. The wall trembled slightly and emitted a faint brilliance. A cold sensation surged into Jong Zan's body, not only not making him feel cold but also refreshing his mind. Jong Zan's spirit also became slightly clearer. His thinking seemed to have become more agile. With a clear mind, Jong Zan's thoughts raced, and a flash of inspiration crossed his mind. According to the ancestral records, the ancestral heritage should exist in the place of inheritance. It shouldn't be wrong. But I have reached the end and haven't found the ancestral heritage, which means. Jong Zan narrowed his eyes and looked at the wall that blocked him, becoming more certain. This is not the end of the place of inheritance. Activating his 95% bloodline concentration, a brilliant bloodlight manifested the profound rules through his spiritual consciousness. Jong Zan punched the wall. The profound rules flowed into the wall like a flock of birds returning to their nests. The profound patterns on the wall burst into a brilliant light, as if verifying Jong Zan's bloodline concentration. Then, with the sound of cracking, the substantial wall revealed cracks. It collapsed with a loud crash. Just as I thought. Jong Zan's heart stirred. It seemed that behind this wall was the most core place of the Jong family's inheritance. The ancestral heritage might be there. Immediately, Jong Zan stepped forward. This was a relatively small secret room. Unlike the spiritual space of 20,000 Jong before, it was not enveloped in milky white light. On the contrary, it was very dim, with only a faint light and a heavy sense of oppression. Jong Zan instinctively surveyed the space. It was empty and unremarkable, without even a trace of energy, plain and unadorned. Jong Zan couldn't figure it out. And at this moment, 3 figures suddenly appeared, very abruptly. Or rather, they couldn't be described as figures. A head that had been cut in half. Although there was no flowing blood, it still gave a sense of blurred flesh and blood. An arm that was nothing but skin and bones, with evil incantations wriggling on it, sending shivers down one's spine. And an eye without a pupil. Jong Zan's eyes widened instantly, and a chilling feeling filled his heart. Although he was currently just a strand of spiritual consciousness, he couldn't help but tremble, a nameless fear engulfing his whole body. If it weren't for the radiance emitted by that eye, soothing Jong Zan's mind, he would probably have fled in panic. Descendant of the Jong family, do not be afraid. We are all members of the Jong family. I am called Jong Ju. The eye turned, and a voice appeared out of thin air. I am Jong Jo, said the arm. The half-headed figure chuckled lightly. I am Jong Tongtian, the 9th generation ancestor of the Jong family. Hearing this, Jong Zan felt slightly relieved in his heart, but his mind was still a bit sluggish as he stared blankly at the 3 ancestors, looking confused. Above the ancestral origins, there were sporadic records about these 3 ancestors. They were all extremely powerful ancestors of the Jong family in ancient times, with terrifying strength that could even rival gods and demons, defying the divine. Such existences, leaving behind soul imprints and their own legacies, why would they manifest in such a terrifying appearance? Time is limited, we cannot answer all your doubts one by one, we can only roughly explain the reasons, so listen carefully. The 9th generation ancestor quickly said, in the ancient end of time, the 8 great human kings led their armies into the ancestral land of the demon race, defying the Kangming demon emperor. When the Kangming demon emperor was on the verge of death, he cast an earth-shattering curse on the 8 great royal clans. The descendants of the royal clans with powerful bloodline talents would have their lifespan diminished. The stronger the bloodline, the greater the decline. If the bloodline concentration reaches 95, the lifespan will be only 300 years. The 9th generation ancestor looked at the black totem on Jong Zan's forehead and spoke with a heavy tone, I believe you also know this information. Jong Zan's expression was solemn as he nodded. And in our era, which is the ancient period, most of the Jong family's extraordinary geniuses with bloodline concentrations above 90 have died prematurely as a result. Even many geniuses with bloodline concentrations in their 80s have perished midway due to the curse. The overall strength of the Jong family has greatly declined. The 9th generation ancestor continued. And with the invasion of gods and demons and powerful enemies lurking, taking advantage of the weakness of our Jong family, they launched a massive attack on us. The Jong family suffered a devastating blow and lost many of its strong members. The entire Jong family was on the verge of destruction. We 3 also died in that great battle, our bodies shattered, leaving only these fragments. After the war, the 2nd generation ancestor awakened the spirituality within our remaining bodies and sealed us here, waiting for the descendants of the Jong family who could come to this place. And the second-generation ancestor himself, he left the celestial wonders realm and traveled through the heavens to find a way to lift the curse. Jong Zan was stunned, staring at the three ancestors in confusion. Three ancestors, why do you wait here for the descendants of the Jong family? Only disciples with bloodline concentrations above 90 can enter this place, which also means that they will inevitably be greatly affected by the curse and have a short lifespan. The ninth-generation ancestor looked at Jong Zan with pity and said in a deep voice, the only way to delay the curse at present is to quickly reach the true God realm. Especially you, child, your bloodline concentration has reached 95, and your lifespan is only 300 years. In the era when I achieved enlightenment, the Jong family also had two extraordinary geniuses with bloodline concentrations of 95, but without exception, they failed to achieve the true God realm and perished when their lifespan ended. To break through to the true God realm within 300 years is extremely difficult. Even if you have obtained the ancestral inheritance, I'm afraid there is only a slight possibility. Moreover, the second-generation ancestor said that the ancestral inheritance is very special, and the ancestor did not leave behind a soul imprint. Therefore, to obtain the ancestral inheritance, one can only rely on the comprehension and understanding of the Jong family disciples themselves. The difficulty is no less than reaching the heavens. Therefore, the second-generation ancestor sealed our remaining bodies here, hoping that we can assist the future generations with our own bodies as nourishment. Hollow eyes, the venerable Zhang Ju also responded with a sigh, we have been waiting for tens of millions of years, but we have never seen a disciple of the Zhang family enter this place. We thought that the Zhang family had already declined and fallen. Fortunately, we have waited for you. Zhang Zhou chuckled, little one, with your bloodline reverting to the 95th generation, on par with the second-generation ancestors, you are truly the great luck of our Zhang family. As long as you don't fall, the future of the Zhang family will undoubtedly be in your hands. Don't worry, with the three of us old folks here, we will definitely help you comprehend the ancestral inheritance. Obtaining the ancestral inheritance may only give you a slight possibility, but there is still some hope after all. Jong Zan stared at the three venerables, his emotions complex. In order to help the future generations of the Zhang family, he had sacrificed his body and waited for tens of millions of years in this confined space. Most importantly, the result they were waiting for was to burn their bodies, sacrifice themselves, and completely vanish. Even so, the three venerables had no complaints, and even enjoyed it. A deep sense of reverence surged in Jong Zan's heart. He was speechless and choked with emotion, only able to respectfully bow. Jong Zan, disciple of the Zhang family, thanks the three venerables. The three venerables chuckled, their laughter filled with contentment and hope. The continuation and prosperity of a family relies on its inheritance. We have only done what we should. The ninth-generation ancestor spoke solemnly, seize the time, guard your mind, and the three of us will help you comprehend the ancestral inheritance. Jong Zan nodded solemnly, sat cross-legged, guarded his mind, and entered a state of clarity. The three venerables did not hesitate either. Their bodies instantly ignited gentle and bright flames, illuminating the dim space and warming Jong Zan's soul. An indescribable power of time and space flowed like a trickle. The confined space collapsed, folded, and compressed, turning into a singularity and disappearing without a trace. It was as if they had left the spiritual space and crossed into another dimension of time and space. It was as if they had traversed the river of time and leapt into the past and future. Even Jong Zan's physical body, outside of the spiritual space, suddenly disappeared. The mountain ancestor and the ancient ancestor were suddenly startled. They teleported to where Jong Zan had been, anxiously searching around, but they couldn't find any traces or aura. They looked at each other, full of astonishment and panic. Jong Zan, where is he? The ancient ancestor's voice trembled. If Jong Zan disappeared right under their noses, they would inevitably become the culprits of the Zhang family. Even if they died, they would never be able to forgive themselves. Jong Zan, with a bloodline concentration of 95, was too important to the current Zhang family. Even if all of them, these old folks, perished, Jong Zan couldn't afford to have any mishaps. Shan Ze's face was heavy, his eyes extremely gloomy, emitting an indescribable hostility that grew madly. Dong, dong, dong. In the center of those towering coffins, a stone coffin made of Shen Yu's divine mountain trembled violently, releasing a terrifying aura that surged out like raging waves, sweeping across the entire divine tomb. Ancient, decayed, and supreme aura surged out like immortal mist, shrouding the sky, transforming into an immense mountain and sea, profound like an ocean, and heavy like an abyss. Boom! An extremely terrifying power pressed down. Hu, Zhang Haoming and the other geniuses who were comprehending the inheritance of the great Tao couldn't bear the unparalleled power, and immediately spewed out a mouthful of blood, prostrating on the ground, fearfully opening their eyes and looking towards Shan Zhu in confusion. What happened? Why is Shan Zhu so angry? The ancient ancestor remained silent, waving his hand to alleviate the pressure on everyone, and said in a deep voice, "Calm down and continue comprehending, don't panic." Without explaining much, he nervously looked at Shan Zhu and silently prayed that Jong Zan must be safe. Shan Zhu was currently using the power of his true body to thoroughly investigate the divine tomb and search for any clues. In this era where venerables reigned supreme, the void gods did not appear, and the true gods were in slumber. Saints were even more elusive existences. In the entire celestial wonders realm, no one could have secretly taken Jong Zan away from under their noses without any signs. There must be someone skilled in concealment who deceived their perception. In other words, although Jong Zan disappeared abruptly, he definitely still remained within the divine tomb. After a moment, Shan Zhu opened his eyes and shook his head slowly. In his vast and profound eyes, there was an undeniable exhaustion and dimness. Even his already aged face showed signs of withering, which was the price of forcibly awakening and using the power of his true body. His already limited lifespan had been further depleted. The ancient ancestor's face changed drastically, his mind in a panic as he muttered, "What should we do now?" Shan Zhu's face turned extremely gloomy. "What else can we do? Wake up all those old fellows and search one by one. Even if we have to turn the divine tomb upside down, we must ensure Jong Zan." But at this moment, a sudden burst of laughter interrupted Shan Zhu's words. I succeeded again. The inheritance of the Holy Array. A saint-grade pinnacle inheritance far surpassing the Taiji Palace map. The position of the young clan leader is still mine. This is the voice of Zhang Chenkin. Despite being disturbed and driven to madness by the consecutive plundering of the great Tao inheritance, one cannot deny Zhang Chenkin's exceptional talent. The fact that he, as a sensitive disciple of the Zhang family, became one of the true inheritors of the yinyang sacred land is evident. Although the two failures have made it much more difficult for Zhang Chenkin to obtain the inheritance again, he persisted and even broke through and stood tall. Under the immense pressure in the spiritual space of the soul realm, his divine soul underwent a transformation, allowing him to reach a higher position, 6,000 Zhang, and obtain a greater Tao inheritance than the Tai Chi Palace diagram. A peak saint-grade inheritance, the 5 elements reversal world saint formation. Different from martial arts inheritance, formation inheritance is even rarer, especially the saint formation inheritance. Throughout the entire profound heaven, there are only a few, usually only mastered by those extremely ancient sacred grounds and major sects, and most of them are incomplete. After all, since the ancient catastrophe, the saints have long become elusive and no longer exist in the world. Not to mention the comprehension of formation Tao as a saint formation master. Zhang Chenkin carries the yin-yang sacred land inheritance and masters the yin and yang qi. If he successfully masters the 5 elements reversal world saint formation, transforming yin and yang into the 5 elements, his combat power will increase by at least 50%. At the same time, he will be able to comprehend the grand Tao of formations. With dual cultivation in formation Tao and martial Tao, his foundation and strength will far surpass his peers. Not to mention the position of the young patriarch of the Zhang family, even the position of the yin-yang saint child will be within his grasp. Without exaggeration, he has already seen his future, with martial Tao in his left hand, formation Tao in his right hand, surpassing countless geniuses, invincible in the profound heaven, attaining the supreme Tao, and becoming the sole ruler of an era. Only to see, from the milky white radiance, a formation diagram that seems substantial emerged, with the rules of the 5 elements Tao surrounding it, shimmering with colorful brilliance. The chaotic aura of the 5 elements reversal made people palpitate. This time, Zhang Chenkin learned his lesson and didn't wait in place for the inheritance to be imparted. Instead, he rushed out directly, intending to absorb the entire inheritance into his body. Even if it would have a certain impact on his foundation, it was still much better than the inheritance disappearing into thin air. After all, this was his last chance, and it was an extremely powerful inheritance. There is no room for error. However, the two ancestors, Mountain Ancestor and Ancient Ancestor, frowned and showed displeasure, even disgust, as they watched this scene. Jong Chenkin being able to obtain a saint formation inheritance is certainly good, and he has the potential to challenge the title of a monstrous genius. In the past, they would have been overjoyed, but now, they are in a panic over Jong Zan's disappearance. Seeing Jong Chenkin so happy, their evaluation of him naturally plummeted. If possible, they would exchange 10,000 Jong Chenkins for Jong Zan's safety. After all, with Jong Chenkin's potential, at most, he would be invincible in the profound heaven. But the height Jong Zan can reach is to step out of the profound heaven, dominate the myriad realms, and ascend to the heavens. Grandfathers, father is undergoing the inheritance and has temporarily left. You don't need to worry, the little girl suddenly spoke up, then looked at Mountain Ancestor and Ancient Ancestor with hopeful eyes, pointing at the saint formation inheritance. Also, father wants me to eat that. Can I eat it? She is craving badly. Based on the connection between their hearts and minds, she knew that her father had gone to receive the inheritance, but she couldn't contact him anymore. The so-called father asking her to eat was obviously a lie. The aura of the ancestors was extremely powerful, and her intuition told her that if she were to have a meal in front of these two people, she might be in danger. She needed to find a good excuse. She could tell that the two ancestors were very concerned about her father, which meant that they should also have some favor towards her. So, she decided to give it a try. After all, the Tao energy in the inheritance of the sacred array was much richer than the Taiji Palace diagram from before. If she could devour it, she would be able to unlock another layer of bloodline seal. It's not surprising that Jong Zan was wary of this true dragon cub and suspected that she was a reincarnation of an old monster. After all, her spiritual wisdom far surpassed her peers, and had even reached an abnormal level. The two ancestors were stunned. Jong Zan was receiving the inheritance. What kind of inheritance would make even his physical body disappear? Moreover, they couldn't see any clues. Could it be? The two ancestors exchanged a glance and immediately had a guess, their eyes shining brightly. The inheritance of the primordial ancestor. Only the inheritance of the primordial ancestor could make Jong Zan disappear without them noticing. With this thought, their anxious hearts finally calmed down. On their gloomy faces, excited smiles appeared. Eat. The ancient ancestor waved his hand and said to the girl. Jong Zan was receiving the inheritance of the primordial ancestor. Once he succeeded, the future of the Jong family would become clear and beautiful. Under this joyful atmosphere, the ancient ancestors' gaze towards the girl became even more doting. As mentioned before, they would gladly exchange 10,000 Jong Chenkin for Jong Zan's safety. Moreover, it was just the inheritance of Jong Chenkin that they were eating. And it was Jong Zan's true dragon cub that was eating it. As the true dragon cub grew stronger, it indirectly enhanced Jong Zan's foundation and strength. The girl's eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, her chubby little hand waved again. The obscure and mysterious pattern of rules rippled like waves. At this moment, Jong Chenkin was holding the arrayed diagram with both hands, slowly absorbing it into his body. This process was not slow, but it couldn't be considered fast either. After all, the arrayed diagram was composed of the rules of the 5 elements Great Tao and contained immense Tao energy. Even with Jong Chenkin's peak nascent soul realm cultivation, forcibly absorbing it into his body was still somewhat difficult. Jong Chenkin was excited, but also cautious and careful, always on guard, afraid that his inheritance would disappear again. But of course, what you fear will come. Buzz. The arrayed diagram disappeared. Clearly, the arrayed diagram was being absorbed into his body, but it suddenly disappeared without a trace, without any signs. Of course, it wasn't completely without any signs, but with Jong Chenkin's current realm, he couldn't see through the divine ability of the true dragon clan. Jong Chenkin was stunned, staring blankly at the empty space in front of him. Silence. Stupefaction. Jong Chenkin's mind was hit by an unprecedented shock. His gaze became unfocused, and his soul was in turmoil. His aura became chaotic, and the spiritual energy in his body reversed, reaching a state of extreme disorder. Boom! The turbulent spiritual energy vented out. No! Jong Chenkin roared with his head raised, his hair flying, his eyes bloodshot, disheveled, and looked like a madman. Puff! A mouthful of blood sprayed out in reverse, splattering in all directions. Jong Chenkin's mind collapsed, unable to bear the consecutive blows of the disappearing inheritances. He fainted and fell back to the ground. Zhang Minghao and the others were still comprehending the inheritances when they were startled by Jong Chenkin's actions. They looked at him in astonishment, unable to understand how he had knocked himself unconscious. They couldn't help but look towards the mountain ancestor and ancient ancestor, their eyes filled with inquiry. The mountain ancestor and ancient ancestor remained silent. They also felt a bit sorry for Jong Chenkin. He had obtained 3 powerful saint-grade inheritances in succession, only to have them all taken away. Anyone would be on the verge of collapse in his situation. But despite feeling sorry for him, it was impossible for them to step forward and mediate. Who did he offend? Jong Zan, of course. What bad luck. Or should I say, 1,000 Jong Chenkins couldn't compare to one Jong Zan. Jong Chenkin made a mistake while accepting the inheritance, but it's not a big problem. The rest of you continue to comprehend it without distraction. Zhang Wang and the other 5 people didn't think much of it and continued to focus on comprehending the inheritance. However, Zhang Minghao, Zhang Feng, and Zhang Bei felt a flicker of joy in their hearts upon hearing this. If Zhong Chenkin had made a mistake, it meant that he might not have obtained the inheritance. He had likely been eliminated from the competition for the position of young clan leader. Their chances of winning had greatly increased. Wait, where was Zhong Zan? Zhang Minghao and the others suddenly realized that Zhong Zan was also nowhere to be seen. Could it be that he had also failed to obtain the inheritance? Their joy grew even stronger. The competition for the position of young clan leader was now assumed to be among the 5 of them. Even Zhang Bei couldn't be considered anymore. It should be a competition among the 4 of them. Now that Zhong Chenkin and Zhong Zan had been eliminated, the situation had clearly become much simpler. Zhang Minghao and Zhang Feng were confident in their hearts. They glanced at each other, their competitiveness fully revealed. Then, they quickly immersed themselves in comprehending the inheritance, making the final push for the upcoming competition for the position of young clan leader. The girl ate the formation voraciously, absorbing the power of the great Tao. Mysterious golden light rippled around her, giving off a sacred aura. Faint golden patterns seemed to emerge on the girl's forehead, as if a pair of dragon horns were gradually growing. The power of the great Tao contained within the formation was even more majestic than the Taiji Palace's inheritance, enough to support the girl in unlocking the second layer of her bloodline seal. Dragon horns. The 5 elements reversal formation naturally also affected Zhong Zan. However, at this moment, Zhong Zan was completely unaware of everything. Or rather, the feedback had not yet reached his consciousness. It was blocked by the power of time and space. This was a very strange place. With shimmering waves and murmuring streams, the clear stream reflected brilliant rays of light. Through the dazzling rays of light, Zhong Zan could see stones of various shapes. These were not ordinary stones. Zhong Zan was extremely certain upon a single glance. Because these stones contained the aura of living beings. Not just 1 or 2 living beings, but billions, trillions. A single stone was a world. Zhong Zan's mind flashed, suddenly filled with astonishment. What kind of place was this? Where was the ancestor's inheritance? Zhong Zan scanned the stream back and forth, filled with confusion and urgency. The 3 ancestors had sent him here at the cost of their lives. He didn't have the qualification to waste time. Unable to find any clues, Zhong Zan became impatient. He could only jump into the stream, attempting to reach the ancestor's inheritance through the most primitive method. In the stream, he picked up one stone after another, carefully observing and exploring. He didn't know how long had passed, or how many stones he had picked up. Zhong Zan had transformed from a teenager into an old man with a hunched figure, white hair, aged face, and empty eyes. His soul had become numb. He had forgotten who he was, where he came from, and why he had come here. He had even forgotten why he was picking up stones here. He was just repeating his actions. He picked up a stone, looked at it, it wasn't the one he wanted, and then threw it back. He didn't know which stone he really wanted, nor did he know what the stone he wanted looked like. Just picking up, looking at, and throwing back. Finally, he got tired. His life came to an end, and he fell down. Just as he picked up another stone, instinctively thinking it wasn't the one, ready to throw it back. Along with his own life, he threw it away. He fell down, falling into the murmuring stream. His dried-up body gradually sank into the stream, becoming a new stone. The shimmering waves, the murmuring stream, seemed no different from before. And, just after he turned into a stone, a young boy appeared by the stream. Looking at the murmuring stream, sensing the countless lives within the stones, he showed a shocked expression. Then, the young boy jumped into the stream, picking up one stone after another, feeling each one. The young boy eventually turned into an old man, falling into the stream, becoming a new stone. Then, another young boy came. And so it went, repeating endlessly, in an endless cycle. One after another, young boys jumped into the stream, picking up stones. One after another, old men fell into the stream, becoming stones. Until Jong Zan looked at the stream, feeling anxious in his heart. He couldn't delay, he was wasting the lives of the three ancestors. Immediately, he was about to jump into the stream, attempting to touch the inheritance of the primordial ancestor in a clumsy way. But just then, the stones in the stream suddenly trembled together, the breath of countless lives within each stone fluctuated, following a special pattern. Jong Zan froze. He stood still, staring at these stones, cautiously sensing. Until he understood the information contained within this pattern, his pupils suddenly contracted. These stones were all himself. Don't jump down. Don't jump down. Boom. This special place shattered with a loud noise. Jong Zan woke up. He returned to that narrow space. The remains of the three ancestors had burned to ashes, leaving only a wisp of soul, forcibly supporting themselves, waiting for Jong Zan's return, waiting for the result they had waited for millions of years. They wanted to know if their thousands of years of waiting, their sacrificed remains, had helped Jong Zan obtain the inheritance of the primordial ancestor, if it had given him more confidence on the path of resisting the curse. Child, did you succeed? The 9th generation ancestor smiled wearily. Jong Zan recalled and comprehended. Then he looked at the three ancestors and nodded solemnly, I succeeded. His voice was hoarse, filled with age. The endless cycle had given Jong Zan's voice and mind a touch of the passage of time. That's good. That's good. The three ancestors smiled with satisfaction. With this vigorous laughter, the remaining thoughts of the three dissipated into nothingness. Only one sentence remained, echoing for a long time. Child, the Jong family is now in your hands. Jong Zan lowered his eyes, a trace of sadness on his face. He slowly stood up, facing the place where the three had dissipated, respectfully bowing. Jong family disciple Jong Zan respectfully bids farewell to the three ancestors. Jong Zan tidied up his emotions and prepared to leave the spiritual space. He didn't deceive the three ancestors, the ancestral inheritance, he did indeed obtain it. But, in reality, he also deceived them. The ancestral inheritance couldn't help himself. Not only could it not help him cultivate to the true God faster, but for a long period of time, he wouldn't even be able to use the ancestral inheritance. If he didn't miscalculate, this period of time when he couldn't use it would be before he achieved enlightenment. Saint, in this era where even virtual gods don't appear, has become a legend floating above the celestial wonders realm. Who knows what he will obtain when he achieves enlightenment, it might take a very long time. Moreover, he only has less than 300 years of lifespan left. Ancestor, it's not your fault that this inheritance couldn't be passed down. Jong Zan couldn't help but complain. The ancestral inheritance, is it strong? Very strong, extremely strong. It has even become so powerful that it surpasses the realm that Jong Zan can currently comprehend. However, this inheritance is too obscure and profound. It contains the principles of the Great Tao, involves hidden aspects of time and space, and is not something an ordinary person can comprehend and practice. No, even if one is an unparalleled genius, they might not be able to reach the threshold. Even he, with the 95 concentration of the Jong family bloodline, plus the sacrifice of the three ancestors, could only barely grasp a bit of the truth of the ancestral inheritance. It is impossible for him to enter and practice. Just think about it, how could such an astonishing inheritance be passed down? Not to mention the current Jong family, suffering from consecutive calamities, curses, and persecutions, the level of their talents has already declined by several levels. Even without these external factors, the rule of bloodline talent gradually declining from generation to generation would make it difficult for the Jong family to produce a genius like him. After all, his current 95 bloodline concentration is thanks to the Goldfinger. There is also one more thing. Jong Zan seriously suspects that even the second-generation ancestors who reached a 95 bloodline concentration like him probably didn't comprehend the ancestral inheritance. Because if the second-generation ancestors were in control of the ancestral inheritance, when the Jong family encountered a strong enemy in ancient times, they wouldn't have suffered such a heavy price, with the strong almost extinct and the inheritance almost broken. Just as Jong Zan was about to leave, a realization of the 5 elements reversal holy erase suddenly surged in his mind, causing him to exclaim in surprise. After roughly understanding it, he couldn't help but laugh. This Jong Chenkin is truly my lucky charm. Immediately, Jong Zan's spiritual consciousness left the spiritual space, and his disappearing physical body reappeared. As his spiritual consciousness returned to his body, Jong Zan slowly opened his eyes, and in his sight, Mountain Ancestor and Ancient Ancestor were staring at him as if they were looking at a rare treasure. Jong Zan quickly stood up, bowed, and smiled. Jong Zan, greetings to Mountain Ancestor and Ancient Ancestor. Did you succeed? Ancient Ancestor suppressed the excitement in his heart and quickly asked. Jong Zan's heart moved, feeling that the reactions of the 2 ancestors seemed a bit off. Could it be that the matter of my bloodline concentration of 95% has been exposed? It can't be. Jong Zan remained cautious. He didn't want to reveal his bloodline, as it would attract the attention and assassination attempts of other clans and even external enemies. Immediately, Jong Zan smiled apologetically and nodded, saying, returning to the ancestors, I succeeded. I was fortunate enough to obtain the inheritance of Zhong Feng, the Taiji Palace diagram. Upon hearing Jong Zan say the word, succeeded, the ancestral ancestor was about to jump up in excitement, but then he saw Jong Zan summon the Taiji fish with one hand, and his expression froze. That halfway excited, suddenly frozen expression was quite comical. The mountain ancestor didn't have much emotional fluctuation. He squinted at the Taiji fish in Jong Zan's hand, deep in thought. Feeling somewhat helpless, this kid is too cautious. Does he really need to hide like this in front of them? Perhaps it was because he didn't have the support of the great Tao energy, or perhaps it was because Jong Zan had only gained insight and had not yet comprehended and practiced it. The Taiji fish in his hand was very faint, a far cry from the Taiji fish that Zhong Feng's ancestral inheritance had manifested. However, the sacred aura emanating from it couldn't be faked. This was an extremely powerful saint-grade inheritance. However, the ancestral ancestor and the mountain ancestor clearly wanted to see something else. They wanted to know if Jong Zan had obtained the ancestral ancestor's inheritance. The ancestral ancestor was a bit impatient and was about to directly ask. But the mountain ancestor preemptively stopped him with his spiritual consciousness and transmitted, regardless of whether he has obtained the ancestral ancestor's inheritance or not, his bloodline concentration of 95% cannot be faked. Since he wants to be cautious and hide to avoid being assassinated by enemies, let's go along with his wishes and help him conceal it. The ancestral ancestor was taken aback. After thinking for a moment, he hesitated. If his talent is not revealed, how can we allocate resources to him? How can we hand over the position of the young clan leader to him? The mountain ancestor glared at the ancestral ancestor and said irritably, with the 2 of us backing him, who in the entire Zhong family dares to say a word against it? The ancestral ancestor suddenly understood and silently nodded. Immediately, the mountain ancestor no longer delayed. He waved his hand and awakened all the outstanding talents who were comprehending the inheritance, including Zhong Chenkin, who had fallen unconscious. Now, choose the young clan leader. Before he could finish speaking, Zhong Chenkin suddenly rose up. The Taiji Palace diagram. So it was you who stole my inheritance. Jong Zan, I'm going to kill you. Zhong Chenkin noticed the Taiji fish in Jong Zan's hand, his eyes widened in anger. In an instant, he understood the cause and effect, his eyes turned blood red, and a chilling aura emanated from him. The aura of yin and yang surged out, empowering the mountains and rivers fan in his hand. The mountains and rivers fan transformed into a magnificent landscape, with towering mountains and surging rivers, terrifying power rolling and shaking the void. Die! Jong Chenkin overturned mountains and rivers with a wave of his hand, suppressing Jong Zan. Jong Wahan and the other 4 people's faces changed, rushing out one after another, intending to block this terrifying divine ability on behalf of the young lord. Indeed, with their strength, the 5 of them combined were no match for Jong Chenkin. However, they were fearless because it was thanks to the young lord that they had the opportunity to enter the divine tomb and obtain the inheritance. Just this favor alone was enough for them to go through fire and water. Meanwhile, Zhang Minghao and the other 3 people stood on the side, observing. Although they didn't understand why Zhong Zan had appeared again and why Zhong Chenkin was so angry, they were happy to witness this scene. Although it was unlikely for Zhong Zan, with his pitiful cultivation level, to defeat Zhong Chenkin, it would still be great if he could at least injure him a little. In any case, it would definitely be advantageous for them. Zhong Zan calmly watched as Zhong Chenkin approached to kill him, his expression unchanged. Although his cultivation level was still in the divine realm, he had enough trump cards that he actually had a chance to fight Zhong Chenkin head-on. Zhong Chenkin was indeed at the peak of the spirit transformation realm, but his cultivation level was forcibly breakthrough, making it unstable. Daddy! The little girl's eyes flashed with worry, then without hesitation, she stood in front of Zhong Zan. Although she had the mind of a demon, she was hatched and born because of the refining and transformation by the 2nd-generation ancestor. Naturally, she sincerely regarded Zhong Zan as her daddy. Moreover, she had just unlocked 2 layers of bloodline seals, greatly increasing her strength. It wouldn't be difficult for her to withstand an opponent at the peak of the spirit transformation realm. Furthermore, she had plenty of means to counter-kill him. However, the next scene was unexpected for everyone. The ancestor made a move. With a simple finger press, there were no fancy anomalies, just a plain and unadorned finger. However, it was like a towering mountain, completely shattering Zhong Chenkin's divine ability, and even Zhong Chenkin himself was pressed to the ground. Behave yourself, the ancestor reprimanded unhappily. Zhong Wahan and the others were extremely surprised. The ancestor had made a move, and judging by his attitude, it seemed like he was on the side of the young lord. Zhang Haoming, Zhang Feng, and Zhang Bei's hearts skipped a beat, vaguely sensing something bad. The ancestor seemed to be favoring Zhong Zan. The little girl also froze for a moment, blinked her big eyes, and a trace of fear flashed through them. These 2 old guys were indeed terrifying. She probably had to unlock at least 5 more layers of seals to barely fight against them. Fortunately, she didn't start a fight just now. Otherwise, she would have really suffered. Even Zhong Zan himself was a little confused. There was no reason for the ancestor to make a move like this. He became even more cautious in his heart. Could it be that his bloodline had really been seen through? No, he had to quickly cultivate the Tianyan secret art, otherwise, he would be exposed at any moment. It didn't feel safe at all. Of course, the most confused person was Zhong Chenkin, who was pressed to the ground. He was angry, he didn't understand, and he felt wronged. Why? Perhaps due to his intense hatred for Zhong Zan, Zhong Chenkin burst out with an unprecedented determination. Under the terrifying finger of the ancestor, he stubbornly lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot, and looked at the ancestor, roaring, "I dare to ask the ancestor, Zhong Zan stole my inheritance first, and I took it back. What's wrong with that? If the ancestor doesn't punish Zhong Zan, that's fine, but why did you have to intervene and stop me? May I ask, ancestors, why is this happening?" As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of Zhang Haoming and the other 2 changed instantly, and waves of shock and fear surged in their hearts. Zhong Zan stole Zhong Chenkin's inheritance. How is this possible? Obtaining the inheritance requires a resonance between the spiritual imprints in the same spiritual space, followed by the descent of the inheritance into their bodies. How could Zhong Zan steal it? He's only in the nascent soul stage, how could he possess such terrifying means? Shan Zhu looked at the defiant Zhong Chenkin and sighed softly. Zhong Zan's talent is monstrous, naturally gaining the favor of Zhong Feng's ancestor. In other words, the inheritance Zhong Zan possesses is not stolen from Zhong Chenkin. Upon hearing this, Zhang Haoming and the others felt a slight relief. While they were amazed that both Jong Zan and Zhang Chenkin had gained the favor of Zhang Feng's ancestor, a situation they had never heard of or seen before, they clearly leaned more towards accepting Shan Zi's explanation. However, Zhang Chenkin didn't believe a single word. Having his inheritance stolen 3 times in a row, he had long gone mad, his heart twisted and paranoid, firmly convinced that Zhong Zan had stolen his inheritance. Shan Zhu and Ji Yuzu were clearly favoring Zhong Zan. I don't believe it, Zhang Chenkin roared angrily, as the ancestors of the Zhong family, by favoring Zhong Zan like this, are you not disrespecting the rules of our Zhong family? Zhang Chenkin, who had gone mad, had lost the last bit of his sanity and directly rebuked Shan Zhu and Ji Yuzu, accusing them of disrespecting the family rules. Silence fell. Zhang Haoming and the others stared at Zhang Chenkin in astonishment, secretly wondering if this person had gone crazy. Challenging the ancestors like this, isn't he just seeking death? As expected, boom, Ji Yuzu pressed down with his finger again, and Zhang Chenkin's body shattered, blood flowing. Ji Yuzu had still held back, only giving him a slight punishment, and with a few months of cultivation, he would recover. Otherwise, with Ji Yuzu's cultivation level, a single finger would be enough to crush Zhang Chenkin into pieces. I am the ancestor of the Zhong family, and I have the final say on how to enforce the family rules. Ji Yuzu looked at Zhang Chenkin indifferently and said calmly. Silence. Not to mention Zhang Chenkin and Zhang Haoming, even Zhong Zan was shocked by Ji Yuzu's domineering words. But, it had to be admitted, Zhong Zan felt very pleased. With Ji Yuzu backing him up, wouldn't he be able to walk sideways in the Zhong family in the future? Before everyone could digest this statement, Ji Yuzu continued, Shan Zhu and I have already agreed that from today onwards, Zhong Zan will assume the position of the young clan leader, and he will be respected by the entire Zhong family. If anyone disrespects him, just come find me, I'll kill anyone I see. Chapter 31. Zhang Haoming and the others, their faces changed drastically, looking incredulously at Ji Yuzu, their hearts filled with doubt, anger, and unwillingness. They all had their sights set on the position of the young clan leader and were confident in their own abilities, believing that they had enough trump cards to overpower others and seize the position of the young clan leader. But they never expected that Ji Yuzu would directly appoint Zhong Zan as the young clan leader. Has this battle already ended before it even began? Then what was the purpose of their journey? Just to accompany Zhong Zan and go through the motions. The group hesitated, wanting to voice their complaints about the unfairness, but in the face of Ji Yuzu's unquestionable demeanor, they couldn't help but feel intimidated. First, he suppressed Zhang Chenkin with a single finger, then he bluntly stated that anyone who disrespected Zhong Zan would be killed on the spot. They didn't dare to risk their lives to challenge Ji Yuzu's bottom line. The one who suffered the most was naturally Zhang Chenkin. First, he had 3 consecutive saint-grade inheritances stolen by Zhong Zan. This trip to the divine tomb left him empty-handed. He, who was one of the 4 esteemed figures of the yinyang sacred land, became a clown pin to the pillar of shame in the Zhong family. Ji Yuzu and Shan Zhu not only didn't stand up for him, but also openly favored Zhong Zan, ruthlessly suppressing him like a miserable stray dog. And now, they directly deprived them of the right to compete fairly for the position of the young clan leader and directly appointed Zhong Zan as the young clan leader. Hatred. Hatred for the injustice. PFF'd. Consumed by anger, Zhang Chenkin spewed a mouthful of blood, staining the ground. Unable to withstand the terrifying power of Ji Yuzu's finger, he immediately fainted. Ji Yuzu and Shan Zhu didn't pay too much attention to this, and they couldn't be bothered to spare another glance. In their hearts, they had already developed a strong aversion towards Zhang Chenkin. Excessive jealousy, inability to accept one's own failure. How can such a mentality pursue the great Tao and have any sincerity in contributing to the Zhong family? The trial in the ancestral land has ended. You can all leave now. Shan Zhu swept his gaze over the group of outstanding individuals, finally landing on Zhong Zan, smiling as he made it clear to Zhong Zan, you are now the young clan leader, but it doesn't mean you will always be. As the esteemed young clan leader of the Zhong family, you should be invincible among your peers. If one day you are surpassed by a peerless genius, then you should willingly step down. Whether it's that bloodline reverting monster, the divine bone born today, or the other outstanding individuals of our Zhong family. As Shan Zhu spoke, his gaze swept over Zhang Haoming and the others one by one. By appointing Jong Zan as the young clan leader, Shan Zhu and Ji Yuzu had undoubtedly caused resentment in Zhang Haoming and the others. Shan Zhu didn't explicitly say anything, but it wouldn't hurt to give them a little encouragement, a little illusion. The resentment in their hearts would naturally be transformed into the motivation to move forward. In addition, this would also push Zhong Zan to grow even harder. After all, this kid is so cunning. If he isn't given some pressure, he might end up like that person from back then, persisting in his mediocrity until death without transcending tribulation. Sure enough, as soon as these words were spoken, Zhang Haoming, Zhang Feng, and Zhang Bei's eyes all lit up, looking at Zhong Zan with a hint of playfulness and deep contemplation in their eyes. They now understood that Shan Zhu and the others had clearly found that bloodline-reverting monster, but they were keeping it a secret. It should be because the other party is still weak and hasn't grown up yet, so they are protecting them in this way. And Zhong Zan being appointed as the young clan leader wasn't because he was particularly strong, but because Shan Zhu and Ji Yuzu happened to choose him to act as a shield for that bloodline-reverting monster, guarding against hostile forces assassinating them. Even if they couldn't snatch the position of the young clan leader from Zhong Zan in the future, when that monster appears, Zhong Zan will still have to hand over the position of the young clan leader. Moreover, Zhong Zan has only reached the divine realm, how could they possibly defeat Zhong Zan? After realizing this, they immediately felt relieved. Facing the meaningful gazes of the crowd, Zhong Zan remained unchanged on the surface, but cursed inwardly. The two ancestors were not doing their job. They clearly saw through his identity as the disciple with reawakened bloodline, that's why they appointed him as the young clan leader and intentionally kept it vague, making people think that there was another person with a reawakened bloodline. This was to provide cover for him and allow him to continue hiding. There was nothing wrong with that. But of course, they had to say that he, as the young clan leader, was not permanent. Wasn't this deliberately provoking Zhang Haoming and the others to challenge him? Everyone is coming to challenge me. I have become the focus of the entire Zhang family. How can I hide my bloodline and continue to survive? After returning, I must quickly cultivate the Tianyan secret technique. Zhong Zan thought to himself. Otherwise, he estimated that he would be exposed in minutes. Go back. The mountain ancestor didn't say much more. With a wave of his sleeve, a gentle force surged, sending Zhong Zan and the others in the divine tomb, as well as all the geniuses cultivating in the ancestral land, out of the ancestral land. Do we really not awaken our true selves and leave this place to protect that kid? The ancient ancestor looked at the mountain ancestor with concern and hesitated. We old bones can die, but that kid's bloodline concentration of 95, comparable to a second-generation ancestor, must not have any mishaps. The mountain ancestor's eyes drooped slightly, his tone calm. That kid has already become the young clan leader. With the strength of those elders in the clan, it is enough to protect Zhong Zan until the great world arrives. If the two of us appear to protect him, it will only cause turmoil, arouse suspicion from hostile forces, and draw even more attention to Zhong Zan. This is not protecting him, but putting him on the fire. Moreover, if you and I awaken, we can only exist for 3 months at most. In the blink of an eye, Zhong Zan may encounter unforeseen circumstances, and we will be completely annihilated. Isn't that sacrificing ourselves in vain? Perhaps because of finding Zhong Zan, this reawakened disciple, the mountain ancestor felt happy and rare, teasingly said, You care too much and lose your sense of proportion. The ancient ancestor glanced at the mountain ancestor and chuckled. It was you who said that if Zhong Zan is a reawakened disciple, you will crawl out of the divine tomb and protect him. Now you're denying it. When Zhong Zan needs me, I will naturally come out and die for him, the mountain ancestor said indifferently. The two ancestors chatted for a long time, burying themselves for millions of years. It was rare for their consciousness to come out, so they naturally had to dissipate the endless loneliness brought by time. After a long time, buzz, the majestic divine tomb trembled slightly, rippling with layers of milky divine radiance, once again cutting through the starry sky and returning to the profound galaxy. At this time, the entire Zhang family was already in a frenzy. Greetings, young clan leader. Zhong Zan and the others returned from the ancestral land. All the elders, clan leaders, powerful figures, and even the disciples of the divine peak, all bowed and saluted. When the mountain ancestor and the ancient ancestor appointed Jong Zan as the young clan leader, it had already declared to the entire Jong family that regardless of whether they recognized it or not, it couldn't change the fact that Jong Zan was already the young clan leader of the Jong family, destined to hold the power and rule over the Jong family in the future. Even if they didn't acknowledge Jong Zan's talent and abilities, or if they had grievances in their hearts, in the current situation, they absolutely couldn't show any dissatisfaction. The ancient ancestor's statement of, "Those who disrespect will be killed," was not a joke. None of them dared to test the truthfulness of that statement with their own lives. Zhang Haoming, Zhang Feng, and Zhang Bei are also present. They exchange glances and suppress the urge to challenge Zhong Zan and reclaim the position of the young patriarch. They bow respectfully and politely. Now is not the time to challenge Zhong Zan. After all, the two ancestors have just declared the Zhong family. If they were to immediately challenge, regardless of the outcome, it would be a slap in the face to the two ancestors. They understand the most basic principles of being a decent person. Moreover, they have not fully comprehended and digested the inheritance they have obtained, so there is no need to rush at this moment. When they have fully mastered the inheritance and their strength has transformed, they can challenge without any risk and easily overpower their opponents. But obviously, Zhang Chenkin is not in this category. When he was sent away from the ancestral land, the mountain ancestor had already used the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to heal his injuries, so he naturally woke up. Facing Zhong Zan, who occupied the position of the young patriarch that rightfully belonged to him, Zhang Chenkin couldn't suppress his anger, let alone bow to him. It would be better to kill him. HMPH. Zhang Chenkin snorted angrily and flew away directly. As one of the four honored ones, his sudden departure at this critical moment shocked everyone. Many elders frowned, feeling displeased. The elders and powerful figures of the Zhang Chenkin lineage also had unpleasant expressions. Zhang Chenkin's lack of respect offended the elders, and their lineage would be affected. This was actually not a big deal. The main reason for their displeasure was, they didn't understand how Zhang Chenkin, with his strength, failed to seize the position of the young patriarch. What's more, he was defeated by Zhong Zan. Zhong Zan's cultivation was only at the nascent soul stage, clearly the weakest among the four honored ones. Zhang Chenkin, who was at the peak of the transformation stage and had mastered many techniques of the yinyang sacred land, how could he lose to Zhong Zan? Of course, it wasn't just Zhang Chenkin who didn't understand. Zhang Haoming, Zhang Feng, Zhang Bei, even people from other major lineages, apart from Zhong Zan's lineage, were puzzled and didn't understand. What happened in the ancestral land trial? How could the position of the young patriarch be taken by Zhong Zan? Whoever took it, it definitely shouldn't have been Zhong Zan. At this moment, the old and wise grand elder walked out and looked at Zhong Zan, his aged eyes filled with anticipation. May I ask, young patriarch, have you recently experienced a bloodline reversion? As soon as these words were spoken, the entire ancestral peak fell silent. Everyone's gaze focused on Zhong Zan, their thoughts varied and contemplative. If Zhong Zan was the monstrous genius who experienced a bloodline reversion to the age of 95, then it would make sense for him to become the young patriarch. Zhong Zan remained calm and shook his head. Grand Elder overestimates me. I don't have that kind of luck to experience a bloodline reversion. The Grand Elder was taken aback, clearly not expecting this situation. Seeing this, Zhang Haoming stepped forward and relayed what the mountain ancestor had said. Upon hearing this, everyone's gaze towards Zhong Zan changed instantly. Especially the elders and powerful figures of the various lineages, their minds became more active. So, the geniuses of their lineages still had a chance. The brows of the Grand Elder and the other elders furrowed slightly, and their previous excitement diminished by half. If Zhong Zan wasn't the monstrous genius who experienced a bloodline reversion, then who could it be? Why would they hide and refuse to reveal their identity? Obviously, in the hearts of the elders, Zhong Zan, the young patriarch, had become a scapegoat for the monstrous genius who experienced a bloodline reversion. Their reverence and regard for him naturally diminished significantly. All of this was immediately noticed by the people of Zhong Zan's lineage. They looked at Zhong Zan, wanting to speak but hesitating. In response, Zhong Zan smiled faintly and said, "I haven't fully comprehended the inheritance yet. I'll take the lead." And then, holding the little girl's hand, Jong Zan led the people of his lineage and walked away. It was only at this moment that everyone noticed, Jong Zan was actually supporting a little girl. Wasn't he supposed to enter the ancestral land for the trial? Where did this little girl come from? Doubts arose in everyone's hearts, but they quickly dissipated. She was just an ordinary little girl, not worth their attention. At this moment, the most important thing was to exhaust all resources and support the geniuses of their lineage, so that they could challenge Jong Zan as soon as possible and replace him. With this in mind, people from various lineages also left one after another, leaving only a group of elders looking at each other, their faces full of confusion. Elder, Jong Zan is obviously a scapegoat pushed out by the mountain ancestor. What about his identity as the young patriarch? One elder hesitated. Many elders also looked at the elder, their faces filled with doubt. A scapegoat still needs to be given the cultivation resources and status of the young patriarch. Everything remains the same. The elder's eyes were deep as he said lightly, since he is a scapegoat, he should appear more convincing, otherwise how can we deceive external forces? The same goes for the guardian. Second elder, you go and inform the supreme elder to protect Jong Zan. The elder instructed. I will remember. The elder looked at the group of elders, his gaze slightly condensed, and solemnly said, Jong Zan is the young patriarch of our Jong family, he is the monstrous genius with bloodline reversion. The elders were first stunned, then they understood the elder's meaning. They nodded thoughtfully, yes. Good news. The information about Jong Zan's bloodline reversion has indeed been kept hidden, and no one suspects it. Bad news. The elder intends to use Jong Zan as a monstrous genius with bloodline reversion to deceive external forces and attract firepower. If the mountain ancestor knew about the elder's series of arrangements, he would probably be so angry that he would crawl out of the divine tomb and personally greet the elder to find out what kind of thinking process he has. Jong Chenkin's dojo. After leaving in anger, Jong Chenkin returned to the dojo, dismissed his attendants, and summoned a spiritual weapon, contacting his master in the yinyang sacred land, the lord of the yinyang sacred land. The yin and yang qi poured into the spiritual weapon, stirring up a dim light, and the yin and yang Tao pattern spread out, gradually outlining a hazy yin and yang realm. In the yin and yang mirror, an illusory figure appeared. Although there was no trace of breath, there was still a suffocating feeling of facing and supreme existence. Jong Chenkin quickly knelt down. Greetings, master. What do you need? The lord of the yin-yang sacred land looked down at Jong Chenkin with an indifferent tone. Reporting to master, disciple, has failed. Jong Chenkin's body trembled as he suppressed the uneasiness in his heart, and fearfully recounted everything that happened in the ancestral land, without missing any details. The mountain ancestor has appointed Jong Zan as the young patriarch. The lord of the yin-yang sacred land's expression slightly condensed, and he instinctively felt that there was something fishy about it. He immediately speculated, could it be that Jong Zan is the monstrous genius with bloodline reversion? Jong Chenkin quickly shook his head and reported with absolute certainty, absolutely not. When I pretended to be angry and fainted, I heard the mountain ancestor say that Jong Zan was just a scapegoat they pushed out to protect the monstrous genius with bloodline reversion. Oh, the lord of the yin-yang sacred land narrowed his eyes slightly, thoughtfully nodding. This is more reasonable. The Jong family is already declining. If there is a monstrous genius with a bloodline concentration of 95, they would never dare to openly make him the young patriarch. Wouldn't that invite assassination from various major forces? If he is just a scapegoat, then everything makes sense. Moreover, Jong Zan's bloodline test at birth was only 75, it is impossible for him to reach 95 through postnatal improvement, it's extremely difficult. The Jong family's move is very foolish. The Yin-Yang Holy Lord pondered for a moment before speaking to Jong Chenkin. I have already made it clear to you before that the position of the young clan leader of the Jong family is the task I have entrusted to you, as well as a test for you. If you successfully seize the position of the young clan leader, I will bestow upon you my inheritance and appoint you as the saint child. With your strength, this test is actually not difficult. But, you still failed. Jong Chenkin lowered his head in shame and said, disciple is ashamed of betraying master's trust. The Yin-Yang Holy Lord shook his head, his tone unchanged, and looked at Jong Chenkin, saying lightly, failure is not terrifying. I can give you another chance. But if you fail again this time. Jong Chenkin suddenly raised his head, his gaze intense, and said in a deep voice, "Master, rest assured, disciple will do everything possible to complete Master's test. Please instruct me, Master, on what to do." The Yinyang Holy Lord nodded with a smile, since Jong Zan is used as a scapegoat if he were to die. Jong Chenkin hesitated. "We are currently not in the ancestral land. If I were to openly assassinate Jong Zan, I'm afraid I won't be able to escape death." The Yinyang Holy Lord shook his head. "You don't need to take action, I will arrange everything properly. When the time comes, you just need to lure Jong Zan and anyone who poses a threat to your position as the young clan leader, and kill them all. With all your competitors dead, the position of the young clan leader will naturally be yours." Upon hearing this, Jong Chenkin's heart skipped a beat, and a deep unease immediately enveloped him. If he were to kill Jong Zan and the others, he would indeed become the young clan leader of the Jong family without any objections. However, this also meant that the Jong family of this generation would be greatly weakened. With a slight mistake, the immortal Jong family, which had inherited for millions of years, would be destroyed in his hands. After all, the ancient saints had long prophesied that this era would be a great revival of the myriad realms, with the return of gods and demons. A great era meant a great calamity. Those who successfully crossed it would prosper, while those who failed would perish. He did indeed have a heavy personal motive. But in the end, he was a member of the Jong family. It made him feel uneasy to ruthlessly harm his fellow clan geniuses. There were just too many of them. In fact, if it were just Jong Zan alone, he wouldn't hesitate at all. He would even spare no effort to tear Jong Zan into pieces. The Yinyang Holy Lord saw Jong Chenkin's hesitation and coldly reprimanded, confused. "You should be clearer than me about the current situation of the Jong family. The bloodline is gradually weakening, each generation inferior to the previous, and there are few geniuses. If it weren't for the imminent arrival of the Great Era, the magnificent luck of the Great Era nourishing the profound heaven, with the current foundation of the Jong family, it would be difficult for even a genius like Jong Zan to be born. Tell me, how can such a Jong family withstand the catastrophic calamity that comes with the Great Era? And how can it preserve itself and continue the name of the immortal Jong family?" Looking at Jong Chenkin, the Yinyang Holy Lord emphasized, "As a genius of the Jong family, your responsibility is to ensure the survival, continuation, and growth of the Jong family. With your talent, in due time, you can achieve the name of a genius. If you take control of the Jong family and ascend to the position of the Yinyang Saint Child, combining the strengths of both families, what great calamity can't be easily overcome? Under the great calamity, the Jong family will naturally have no worries." Jong Chenkin was stunned. The words of the master were something he had never considered before, as if they had opened a door for him, giving him a sense of enlightenment. Seeing that his words had an effect, the Yinyang Holy Lord continued to administer a strong medicine to Jong Chenkin, saying in a deep voice, "To be frank, I value you greatly. If you can control the Jong family, I intend to appoint you as the next Holy Lord. At that time, with you in control of the Yinyang sacred land and the Jong family as your backing, you will stand undefeated, and even further, you will have the opportunity to dominate the profound heaven." Jong Chenkin's eyes suddenly widened, a glimmer of ambition flashed through them. To control the Jong family, to take charge of the Yinyang sacred land, and to dominate the celestial wonders realm. An unprecedented ambition surged in his mind. Even his breathing became more rapid. Jong Chenkin's gaze instantly became firm. He looked at the Yinyang Holy Lord, respectfully kowtowed, and solemnly said, "Thank you, Master, for pointing me in the right direction. Disciple knows what to do now. In the short term, killing Jong Zan and the others would indeed damage the foundation of the Jong family. However, all of that is illusory. With Jong Zan and the others' qualifications, they are fundamentally unable to bear the responsibility of protecting the Jong family, let alone have the ability to strengthen the Jong family and restore the glory of the Jong family's ancestral lineage. Even if that divine bone, even if that bloodline reverting monster, it's still the same. Time waits for no one, the Great Era could arrive at any moment. Only he has the qualifications and ability to achieve all of this. Eastern Divine Continent, the Far West. Uncountable nameless immortal mountains, like stars scattered across the boundless ocean. Deep surging waves contain a terrifying and majestic energy. The ethereal immortal mountains circulate with mysterious and countless Tao symbols, displaying divine and extraordinary phenomena that reflect the heavens and earth. Clearly, these two magnificent scenes are not in harmony, but they are miraculously integrated into one, as if they were born as a whole, following an indescribable rule and order. This is where the yinyang sacred land is located. The ancient yinyang sacred land's lineage is already untraceable, and even before the recorded ages in the celestial wonders realm, the yinyang sacred land had already existed, towering at the peak of the profound heaven. Through the fragmented images in various lost ruins, it can be vaguely understood that during its peak, even gods and demons had to retreat. However, during those glorious eras and great times, the yinyang sacred land would be low-key, and even secluded from the world. Therefore, the entire celestial wonders realm has very little understanding of the yinyang sacred land. Only one thing is clear: the yinyang sacred land is ancient and powerful, not to be easily provoked. Faintly visible on each immortal mountain are thick and sturdy chains, resembling dragon-like shackles. The other end of the chains is connected to a magnificent celestial palace. The celestial palace exists in the void, appearing and disappearing. It quietly ripples with the eerie aura of the intertwining of yin and yang. The yin-yang sacred palace. Inside the palace, the yin-yang sacred lord, dressed in a platinum Tao robe, waved his hand to dispel Zhang Chenkin's communication image. His eyes narrowed slightly, emitting a faint light and darkness, yin and yang. Buzz. A profound light and shadow surged out from within the yin-yang sacred lord, and obscure Tao patterns scattered, gradually forming a figure shrouded in black mist. If there were outsiders present, they would be extremely shocked. Because the face of the figure in the black mist is exactly the same as the yin-yang sacred lord. "Your disciple is quite naive and cute," the figure in the mist said with a sinister smile. The yin-yang sacred lord glanced at the figure, his expression unchanged, his tone calm. The easiest to deceive are always these geniuses, with average qualifications but lofty ambitions. They are unwilling to fall behind others and never reflect on their own mediocrity. They only blame their failures on external factors. These people are full of jealousy and endless desires. With a little instigation, they can be easily manipulated and controlled. Zhang Chenkin is no exception. The figure in the mist clicked his tongue and couldn't help but applaud. As someone who comprehends the Yang Dao, you should have a righteous and upright image. Unexpectedly, you have also understood human nature, hypocrisy, and deceit, effortlessly. The yin-yang sacred lord neither confirmed nor denied, his eyes slightly raised as he looked at the figure, his voice slightly condensed. "I hope you haven't deceived me. We are originally one, how could there be deception between us?" The figure shrugged. "You have also verified it. The Zhang family of Chengsheng is indeed one of the human realm spirit clans, descendants of the ancient human race. Their bodies contain the bloodline of the spirit clan, carrying the vitality and lifespan of the ancient human race. As long as the concentration of the spirit clan bloodline in those Zhang family disciples reaches 60, its effect is comparable to the supreme holy medicine. I have told you before, in my era, there were many supreme existences specifically hunting down Zhang family disciples with a bloodline concentration exceeding 60, treating them as blood food, devouring and refining them to enhance their potential and prolong their lifespan." The figure looked at the yin-yang sacred lord and smiled faintly. "You and I must integrate yin and yang, become one, in order to comprehend the great Tao. But you also know that I am from the past, while you exist in the present. There is a shackle of time order between us, making it extremely difficult to achieve integration. Since we can't find the miraculous holy medicine, the Zhang family's spirit clan is the best choice. There is one thing I don't understand." The yin-yang sacred lord raised his eyes slightly, looking at the figure, and asked in a deep voice, "Since the Zhang family is a spirit clan with the bloodline of the ancient human race, why are they so weak?" The figure looked at the yin-yang holy lord as if looking at a fool and couldn't help but sneer. "The Zhang family, with a heritage of millions of years, and you actually think they are weak? Who gave you that misconception?" The yin-yang holy lord frowned, not understanding. The figure shook its head and laughed. "You should know that in my era, the Zhang family's strength was so great that even the gods and demons from beyond the domain would fear them. If it weren't for the ancient forces from various sides rising up and attacking, causing the downfall of the Zhang family's powerful individuals, the current Zhang family would probably still be the uncrowned king of the entire Celestial Wonders realm." The Yin-Yang Holy Lord's heart skipped a beat, shocked by what was said about his past life. You see, his past life existed in ancient times, when the celestial wonders realm had not yet been sealed, and the myriad realms had not withered away. The ancient forces mentioned in his past life must have been based on the strongest traditions of the myriad realms. The Jong family at that time had experienced such a catastrophic disaster, yet they had stubbornly continued for millions of years and still retained the name of longevity. The Spirit Clan, are they really that powerful? Or perhaps sensing what the Yin-Yang Holy Lord was thinking, the figure shook its head and laughed. The power of the Spirit Clan is far beyond your imagination. Do you know that these spirit clans, including the Jong family, are so powerful that even the heavens and earth fear them, and even impose heavenly condemnation to restrict their growth? Do you also know that it is because of the existence of heavenly condemnation that those ancient forces have the courage to unite and attack the Jong family? The heavens and earth fear them. The Yin-Yang Holy Lord's eyelids twitched, showing astonishment. The figure chuckled. The specific reasons are unknown, but according to the research of those ancient forces at the time, disciples with spirit clan bloodlines generally have shorter lifespans than normal people. And, the higher the concentration of bloodlines, the shorter the lifespan. Moreover, when the bloodline concentration of a monster with an excessively high concentration breaks through, it will also face heavenly tribulation, even if it's just breaking through the foundation building stage. Heavenly tribulation. The Yin-Yang Holy Lord was stunned. You see, it wasn't until the heavenly origin realm that one would begin to attempt to contact the power of heaven and earth. In other words, only when one breaks through the heavenly origin realm and higher realms would they trigger heavenly tribulation. Not to mention the decline in lifespan, just the heavenly tribulation, the heavenly condemnation of the spirit clan is too terrifying. In ancient times, when the powerful ones perished and were burdened with heavenly condemnation, the Jong family still continued to exist and never lost the name of longevity. The figure glanced at the Yin-Yang Holy Lord and said lightly, "Now, do you still think the Jong family is weak?" The Yin-Yang Holy Lord fell silent. After a long time, he slowly spoke, calmly saying, "I admit that I underestimated the Jong family, but it doesn't hinder me too much. If Jong Chenkin plays his cards right, no matter how powerful the Jong family is, no matter how much heritage they have, they still won't escape from the palm of my hand." The figure couldn't help but ask, "I don't quite understand, why are you so fixated on Jong Chenkin?" The Yin-Yang Holy Lord smiled coldly, "As long as Jong Chenkin takes control of the Jong family will be my restricted area, constantly producing spirit clans for me to use. The spirit clan is such a good thing, I can't exhaust its resources." The figure looked at the Yin-Yang Holy Lord with surprise and smiled meaningfully, "I'm starting to look forward to the day when I can be integrated union with you. Encompassing the past and present Yin-Yang Tao, it will surely overturn this world." Eastern Divine Continent, Southern Region, the 100,000 Mountains. Pure Yang Sword Palace. The young patriarch of the longevity Jong family has been determined, and it is one of the four venerables, Jong Zan. Sitting high on the sword platform forged by the pure Yang sword master Gao Zuo Riyao, he looked down at the elders of the sword palace and calmly asked, "What do you think we should do about this matter?" The grudge between the pure Yang sword palace and the Jong family has existed since ancient times, and its origins are no longer traceable. Especially in recent millennia, they have constantly waged wars against each other, and the number of fallen geniuses is countless. Even the powerful cultivators in the venerable realm have suffered significant losses. The two forces have long been incompatible and cannot coexist. At this moment, the second elder in black sword robes stepped forward, bowed respectfully, his face filled with killing intent, and said in a deep voice, reporting to the sword master, "Recently a disciple of the Jong family experienced a bloodline reversion, causing a disturbance in the divine shrine and the emergence of a divine bone. It is truly an extraordinary event. If we don't respond early, given enough time, our pure Yang sword palace will be powerless to contend with them." Upon hearing this, the elders couldn't help but roll their eyes. "What you're saying is just nonsense. It's obvious to everyone. Who can't see it?" The pure Yang sword master looked at the second elder and calmly asked, "According to your opinion, how should we respond?" "We must quickly investigate the exact information about the bloodline reverted monster and the divine bone, then gather our strongest warriors and eliminate them at all costs." The second elder's eyes narrowed slightly as he sneered. According to the intelligence, Jong Zan's cultivation is only in the divine realm, clearly the weakest among the 4 Jong family geniuses. Yet, he has been appointed as the young clan leader, obviously being used as a shield for those 2 monsters. I think we can ignore him. Upon hearing this, everyone nodded thoughtfully. The speed at which the Jong family established the young clan leader position this time was extremely fast and filled with strangeness. You see, in the past, the Jong family's selection of the young clan leader would go through multiple trials and competitions, allowing the 4 young geniuses to compete multiple times before determining the winner. But this time, it took less than 2 days. Coupled with the appearance of those 2 monsters from the Jong family, everything became clear. Clear to the point that they all began to doubt. Could a prestigious ancient family that has existed for millions of years really do something so foolish? Elder, what do you think? The pure young sword master looked at the elderly Grand Elder. In the wise light shining in the old Grand Elder's aged eyes, he pondered for a moment before stepping forward and bowing, saying, in terms of the overall situation, I agree with what the second elder said. We must quickly find out the information about those 2 monsters from the Jong family and eliminate them while they are still in their infancy. If necessary, we can even awaken the virtual god realm ancestor sleeping in our ancestral land. Upon hearing this, everyone's minds trembled, and their expressions became serious. To awaken the virtual god realm ancestor, that would elevate the situation to another level. If they were even slightly careless, the entire pure Yang Sword Palace would be destroyed. The pure Yang Sword Master's eyes narrowed slightly, also shocked by what the Grand Elder said. Do you think, Grand Elder, that those 2 monsters from the Jong family will endanger the survival of our pure Yang Sword Palace? It's not a matter of will, it's certain. The Grand Elder said in a deep voice, not to mention the divine bone, just the bloodline reverted monster, if allowed to grow, it's not impossible for him to achieve godhood, let alone achieve sainthood. Don't forget, the great era is about to arrive. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's hearts trembled, suddenly understanding the Grand Elder's concerns. If they couldn't suppress the resurgence of the Jong family under the influence of the great era, the pure Yang Sword Palace would undoubtedly be affected, even swept away by the torrent of the Great Era, reduced to ashes. After all, in the glorious Great Era, there are countless forces rapidly growing, and staying in one place is equivalent to being left far behind. As for Jong Zan, the so-called young clan leader, don't pay too much attention to him, but also don't completely ignore him. At least we need to make a corresponding response to make the Jong family suspicious and let them drop their guard. In this way, we will have a chance to find those 2 monsters. The Grand Elder's eyes were indifferent as he chuckled, let's follow the usual practice, offering a Dao-level technique, a king-grade medicine, and 100 large-scale medicines as a reward for Jong Zan. Let the geniuses of our pure Yang Sword Palace sharpen their swords on him. The pure Yang Sword Master nodded thoughtfully and looked around at the elders. He spoke softly, I will follow the words of the elder and offer a reward for Jong Zan, allowing our sword sect prodigies to assassinate him in the mortal world. I will personally go to the sword tomb and consult the ancestor. When necessary, we can use all the power of the sword sect to kill the Jong family. The pure Yang Sword Master's eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold killing intent surged. He said coldly, the great era is approaching, and we cannot tolerate any rise of the Jong family. Yes, the elders responded in a deep voice. Furthermore, the pure Yang Sword Master pondered for a moment and slowly said, the 3 sword disciples who have been sealed for many eras should also be awakened. In this great era, we must fight. The hearts of the people stirred, and a hint of joy appeared on their originally solemn faces. The disciples of the pure Yang Sword sect in this generation generally had average aptitude, and there were many prodigies among them, but there was not a single prodigy capable of leading the army, let alone a monstrous talent. This was also the reason why they were so worried when the Jong family produced 2 monstrous talents. However, if they could awaken the 3 sword disciples, this problem would naturally be solved. The 3 sword disciples were the most terrifying monstrous talents in the pure Yang Sword sect in nearly 1,000,000 years. One was born with a sword heart, one was the reincarnation of the 3rd generation pure Yang Sword Master, and the other was born with the ability to cut through time and space and transmit teachings across space. All 3 of them had once dominated an era and were unparalleled in the profound heaven. In order to pursue a broader future, to seize the opportunity of the Great Era, and to push the path to its peak, they chose to hide and seal themselves within the 100,000 mountains of the pure yang. If all three sword disciples were awakened, even if the two monstrous talents of the Zhang family grew up, it would not be a concern. Once the reward from the pure yang sword sect was announced, there were noticeably more sword cultivators coming out of the 100,000 mountains. On the vast and boundless eastern divine continent, where battles between prodigies were rarely seen even in several months, they gradually became more frequent. Some people recorded the events and were astonished to find that there were actually the figures of the Zhang family's prodigies among them. As for the other prodigies, besides the pure yang sword sect, there were also the Tai Dao sect, the Heavenly Slaughter Temple, the moon-worshipping divine religion, the Tianyi Holy Land, and the immortal Zhao family, almost encompassing nearly 70% of the top sects in the eastern divine continent. After many days, the cultivators gradually learned the whole story. It turned out that all these top sects had established a reward specifically targeting Jong Zan, the newly appointed young patriarch of the Zhang family. The rewards offered were surprisingly consistent. A Dao-level technique, a king-grade medicinal plant, and 100 large medicinal plants. Regarding this, those who observed from the sidelines and the powerful cultivators all had doubts in their hearts. Such rewards could not be considered meager. After all, the target of the reward, Jong Zan, was only at the nascent soul stage. However, the top sect still offered a reward for the young patriarch of the Zhang family, who was suspected of having a bloodline that had regressed to the age of 95. Wasn't this reward a bit too paltry? Moreover, Jong Zan was suspected of having a monstrous talent. Could it be that these top sects believed that the Zhang family would exhaust all their resources to protect Jong Zan and that it would be impossible to successfully assassinate him, so they had given up on the idea and simply made a half-hearted reward? In the southern divine continent, at the desolate heaven divine sect. Reporting to the divine maiden, according to the information sent back by our disciples in the eastern divine continent, that Jong Zan has already become the young patriarch of the Zhang family. And various sects in the eastern divine continent have issued rewards for Jong Zan. Wang Steward stood in front of the divine maiden Luo Xinglan of the desolate heaven divine sect and respectfully reported. He was in charge of most of the intelligence work in the eastern divine continent and was called by the divine maiden today to inquire about Jong Zan. He has become the young patriarch so quickly. His speed is astonishing. Luo Xinglan's beautiful eyes flickered as she murmured to herself. She had thought that it would take some time for Jong Zan to rise, but she didn't expect his growth speed to be so rapid. In just a few days, at most half a month, he had gone from a young lord to the young patriarch. It should be noted that Jong Zan's cultivation was still at the nascent soul stage and had not yet reached the spirit transformation stage. Luo Xinglan held a letter in her hand, which was Jong Zan's reply. The words, "I won't go," were clearly visible. It seemed that she would have to adjust her approach to befriend Jong Zan once again. At this thought, a hint of sadness flashed in Luo Xinglan's beautiful eyes. The other party had already become the young clan leader, reaching the pinnacle of resources and power among the younger generation. How could she show her goodwill and convey her sincerity? Steward Wang stood respectfully on the side, witnessing the conflicted expression of the goddess. His mind was in turmoil, filled with unease. Am I relying on it? Could the goddess still be infatuated with Jong Zan? The previous proposal of marriage had already caused a stir both inside and outside the divine sect. Now that it had been rejected, she still couldn't let go. Could the goddess be Jong Zan's lackey? Steward Wang's heart was filled with mixed emotions. As a mere steward, he naturally had no right to inquire about the goddess's affairs. However, the thought of the goddess, who was adored by the entire desolate heaven divine sect, being infatuated with a cultivator in the nascent soul stage. Although the other party had now become the young clan leader of the Chengsheng Zhang family, based on the information he possessed, Jong Zan was nothing more than a pawn pushed out by the Zhang family to deflect attention. How could such a minor character be worthy of the goddess? After much hesitation, Steward Wang chose to steel himself and respectfully said, "I dare to report some unconfirmed news." "Speak," the goddess said calmly. Nearly 70% of the top Dao lineages in the eastern divine continent have offered a reward for Jong Zan, consisting of a Dao-level technique, a king-grade medicinal herb, and 100 large medicinal herbs, Steward Wang continued. A Dao-level technique, a king-grade medicinal herb, and 100 large medicinal herbs. Luo Xinglan's beautiful eyes furrowed slightly, and she couldn't help but sneer. She said something that made Steward Wang's mind freeze. How stingy. She was very certain that Jong Zan was the monstrous genius who had returned to the 95th generation of his bloodline. She even suspected that the so-called other monstrous genius with divine bones was also Jong Zan. After all, in her previous life, Jong Zan was an unparalleled existence that the entire profound heaven had to look up to. It was not surprising for him to possess both a bloodline that had returned to its ancestors and divine bones. For such a peerless monstrous genius, they only offered such a meager reward. If it wasn't stinginess, then what was it? However, she didn't understand why the Jong family dared to openly display him, even though he was such a peerless monstrous genius. Were they really not afraid of hostile forces causing trouble and directly deploying a void god ancestor to kill him? Does the Jong family have absolute confidence, or are they just foolish? Luo Xinglan had doubts in her heart. Steward Wang muttered to himself, "It's over." The goddess's tone undoubtedly confirmed that he was Jong Zan's lackey. Without hesitation, he continued, "Based on the reactions of the major Dao lineages and the recent anomalies emanating from the Jong family, I suspect that Jong Zan, this young clan leader, is just a pawn pushed out by the Jong family to attract attention and protect the two newly emerged monstrous geniuses with bloodline reversion and divine bones. I hope the goddess can see through it." Jong Zan. Steward Wang paused for a moment, gritted his teeth, and said in a deep voice, "Most likely, he is just a discarded pawn of the Jong family." The meaning behind his words couldn't be any clearer. Buzz. Luo Xinglan suddenly turned around, her eyes containing starlight, emitting a cold and icy gaze as she stared at Steward Wang. Her tone was serious and cold. "Steward Wang, you should be aware of your position. Today, I will consider your words as unintentional. If there is a next time, apologize on your own." "I acknowledge my guilt." Steward Wang knelt down with a thud, drenched in cold sweat. In that moment just now, he clearly sensed the killing intent from the goddess. His life and death were at the mercy of the goddess's whim. Luo Xinglan nodded slightly, looking at Steward Wang with indifference. "Order the elder stationed in the Eastern Divine Continent to inform the major Dao lineages in the name of the Desolate Heaven Divine Sect to revoke the reward within 3 days. Otherwise, it will be seen as provoking our Desolate Heaven Divine Sect, and they will bear the consequences." Jong Zan's progress was too rapid, and now that the invitation to the true god's relic had been rejected, she had to make some gestures to show her goodwill. Even if it meant angering the Dao lineages of the Eastern Divine Continent, she was willing to do so. She clearly remembered that in the future, Jong Zan alone would be able to suppress the entire Celestial Wonders realm. Steward Wang suddenly looked up, his face filled with disbelief as he looked at Luo Xinglan. Waves of shock surged in his heart. This is too much, right? Once this order is executed, it will undoubtedly anger all the Dao lineages in the Eastern Divine Continent. Although the Desolate Heaven Divine Sect had been growing stronger in recent years and had a tendency to dominate the Southern Divine Continent, they still had a long way to go before they could succeed. Moreover, they were the overlords of the Southern Divine Continent, not the Eastern Divine Continent. The Eastern Divine Continent was recognized as a prosperous land in the Celestial Wonders realm, and all the top Dao lineages there were suppressing the other divine continents. Especially, the yinyang sacred land, recognized as the #1 power in the profound heaven, was located in the Eastern Divine Continent. The goddess's order was too bold, wasn't it? This. Wang, the steward, felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. He was just a lowly steward and couldn't and didn't dare to accept the command of the goddess. Just then, buzz, ripples appeared in the void, accompanied by an ancient and desolate aura. Desolate Heaven, the master of the divine sect, slowly emerged. His burly figure was like a black hole, encompassing all the brightness in the world. "Greetings, Master." Luo Xinglan and Wang, the steward, bowed respectfully. "Xinglan, don't act impulsively," Desolate Heaven said, looking at Luo Xinglan with a complex tone and a hint of anger. He had always been very satisfied with Luo Xinglan and had high hopes for her. He had spared no effort in grooming her as his successor. Luo Xinglan had not disappointed him. In recent years, she had excelled in both her cultivation and the management of the divine sect. In some aspects, she even outperformed most of the elders. He entrusted most of the affairs of the divine sect to her, while he focused on his own cultivation, attempting to break through to the next level. But what surprised him was that the usually calm and composed Luo Xinglan had become impulsive and confused whenever she encountered anything related to Jong Zan in recent days. To be honest, he was filled with worry. Luo Xinglan, the goddess of the desolate heaven divine sect, was a genius with boundless potential. She was destined to become a god and even challenge the name of immortality. He couldn't believe that she would really fall into a romantic relationship with Jong Zan and become his lackey. Luo Xinglan lowered her eyes slightly, naturally sensing her master's concerns and worries. However, she couldn't openly explain the reason. If she directly said that Jong Zan would become an extremely powerful figure in the future, her master would definitely not believe it. After all, the concept of reincarnation was too unbelievable. Luo Xinglan pondered for a moment and then calmly said, "Please trust me, master. Everything I do is for the future of our desolate heaven divine sect. Making a good impression on Jong Zan is beneficial to our divine sect and harmless." Desolate Heaven was taken aback for a moment. After a brief silence, he asked in a deep voice, "I need a reason." Luo Xinglan shook her head slowly and said, "I apologize, master, but I can't reveal the reason for now." One reason was that her master wouldn't believe it even if she said it. The other reason was, she was worried that revealing it would cause disturbances in time and space, altering the course of her past life. Her precious memories that were still sealed would lose their effect, and her reliance would greatly weaken. In her past life, she had reached the level of a true god and had a preliminary understanding of causality. She knew the horror of the butterfly effect. Desolate Heaven stared at Luo Xinglan, his eyes gradually deepening. After a moment of contemplation, he nodded slightly and said, "I will allow you to be willful this once. But remember one thing, the Desolate Heaven divine sect is your foundation. I, the elders, and even the ancestors have high hopes for you and care for you deeply. Don't let everyone down." A warm feeling surged in Luo Xinglan's heart as she nodded earnestly. "Rest assured, Master, Xinglan will never forget. It was precisely because of the divine sect's love and care for her that she had resolutely stood by the divine sect in her past life until the last drop of blood was shed. And it was the same in this life. She had taken the initiative to form a marriage alliance with Jong Zan, and now she was supporting Jong Zan in the name of the divine sect. All of this was for the future of the divine sect, in the hope that when the great calamity of the divine sect arrived, Jong Zan would lend a helping hand." Desolate Heaven nodded and then looked at Wang, the steward, instructing, "Wang, do as the goddess said." "Yes, Wang," the steward replied respectfully. Soon, the warning from the Desolate Heaven divine sect spread throughout the entire Eastern divine continent, causing a great uproar. Many sects and countless powerful individuals were filled with doubts and astonishment. What on earth was the Desolate Heaven divine sect doing? Come on. Your goddess took the initiative to form a marriage alliance with the Zhang family's Jong Zan, only to be harshly rejected and slapped in the face. It would have been fine if you didn't retaliate, but now you're actively protecting Jong Zan. Even if it means angering 70% of the top powers in the Eastern Divine Continent. What benefit does it bring to your Desolate Heaven divine sect? As a top dominant force, are you really going to please the Zhang family so servilely? Isn't this being cheap? Soon, this matter spread throughout the entire Celestial Wonders realm. For a while, not only the Eastern Divine Continent and the Southern Divine Continent, but even the other major divine continents were left speechless by the manipulation of the Desolate Heaven divine sect. However, the status of the Desolate Heaven divine sect was still there. As an existence that almost dominated the Southern Divine Continent, no one could ignore their voice. Once they truly angered the Desolate Heaven divine sect, their wrath would be unleashed. Even the yinyang sacred land would have to consider it. Therefore, a few days later, except for the pure Yang Sword Palace, the Heavenly Execution Hall, the immortal Zhao family, and the Zhang family, who had long accumulated deep enmity with each other, all the other forces chose to compromise and cancel the bounty. Jong Zan was not their main target to begin with, and the so-called bounty was just a way to confuse the Zhang family and give them a better chance to find the two hidden geniuses. Now that the Desolate Heaven divine sect insisted on protecting Jong Zan, they just went along with it. There was no loss for them. In this way, the Eastern Divine Continent was stirred up by Jong Zan and gradually calmed down in this dramatic manner. On the other side, in the borderlands of the Eastern Divine Continent, at Azure Sun Gate, by the order of the young clan leader, 2 Dao-level inheritances are sent to Miss Nangong. A strong member of the Zhang family respectfully handed a storage ring to Nangong Mingyu. The master of Azure Sun Gate, Bei Qing, stood on the side, his expression changing, showing both shock and awe. 2 Dao-level inheritances. It should be known that even among the top powers, Dao-level inheritances are extremely precious. Only the most outstanding individuals have the qualifications to cultivate them. And among the top forces, Dao-level inheritances are already the most core inheritances. Bei Qing knew his own situation. Although Azure Sun Gate barely made it into the top forces, their foundation was very shallow. They were even inferior to many second-rate forces that had inherited for thousands of years. For example, Azure Sun Gate only had 3 Dao-level inheritances in total. Jong Zan, the young lord, oh no, now the young clan leader Jong Zan, actually made such a generous move, directly giving away 2 Dao-level inheritances. From this, it could be seen that Jong Zan held a crucial position in the Zhang family. After all, ordinary people didn't have the ability to give away 2 Dao-level inheritances. Even if they did, the elders of the clan would not allow it. As for Nangong Mingyu, the person involved, she stood still, completely stunned, as she looked at the ring handed to her. How could she not know what 2 Dao-level inheritances meant? Her heart surged, and her beautiful eyes couldn't help but glisten. Clutching the ring tightly, Nangong Mingyu didn't say anything. She turned around and returned to her training ground, continuing her cultivation. Recently, news of the bounties on Jong Zan and the many geniuses hunting him had spread throughout the Eastern Divine Continent. Although she had been cultivating in Azure Sun Gate all this time, she had also heard some rumors. However, her cultivation level was still weak, and she couldn't provide any help. She was now eager to improve her strength and help Jong Zan, even if it was just to enter the world and kill a few geniuses who wanted to hunt Jong Zan. After personally seeing off the strong members of the Zhang family, Bei Qing looked at Nangong Mingyu's training ground and pondered for a long time. Jong Zan was loyal and valued Nangong Mingyu greatly. This was not only Nangong Mingyu's blessing, but also an opportunity for Azure Sun Gate. After all, under normal circumstances, Azure Sun Gate would never have a chance to establish a connection with the Zhang family in their lifetime. I must quickly appoint Nangong Mingyu as the young gate master. A determined light flashed in Bei Qing's eyes as he gradually solidified his thoughts. This was the only way for Azure Sun Gate to climb up to Jong Zan. Besides, I need to go out and find some heavenly treasures to please my disciple. Bei Qing muttered to himself, then called for the flame crow and flew out of Azure Sun Gate. And at this time, Nangong Mingyu began even more diligent cultivation. She had originally abandoned her cultivation and started over. With the massive resources provided by Jong Zan, her cultivation naturally skyrocketed like a rocket. Furthermore, just a few days ago, she successfully achieved foundation building. In other words, from body tempering to foundation building, Nangong Mingyu only took less than half a month. This speed, in the entire Celestial Wonders realm, is probably unique. At the same time, due to the improvement of her techniques, Nangong Mingyu's acquired fire spiritual body has also greatly improved. Although it is still considered an acquired spiritual body, it is no longer inferior to an innate spiritual body. Even her comprehension of the great Tao of fire has made significant progress, and her understanding has reached the mid-stage. If we say that the initial understanding of the great Tao of fire that Nangong Mingyu had just grasped was like a small flame, then now, it is like a fire beast. At the same time, in the Zhang family, in Jong Zan's dojo, Nangong Mingyu's understanding of the great Tao of fire has reached the mid-stage, and you have received the corresponding feedback. Your understanding of the great Tao of fire has also reached the mid-stage. A prompt appeared before Jong Zan's eyes. Buzz. Layers of flame surged around Jong Zan, evolving into a sea of fire, surging and burning everything in its path. Within the surging sea of fire, faint shadows of ferocious beasts could be seen, fierce and roaring. The meaning of the great Tao gives birth to countless living beings. This is the key to breaking through the spirit transformation realm. In other words, Jong Zan, who has mastered the meaning of the Great Tao, can actually break through to the spirit transformation realm at any time. However, he is not in a hurry. He seeks to break through the three extremes of the physical body, the divine soul, and the cultivation realm, in order to forge an unparalleled foundation. The physical body and the divine soul had already broken through the extremes in the previous cultivation, and now only the cultivation realm is left. He originally wanted to break through the extreme of the cultivation realm in his ancestral land, but unfortunately, a series of changes disrupted his rhythm. During this closed-door cultivation, Jong Zan was not in a hurry to break through, let alone break through the extreme of the cultivation realm. What he was most eager to do now was to cultivate the yinyang secret technique and completely conceal his own bloodline. He must hide himself. Only by hiding first can he have the hope of seizing opportunities and achieving true godhood within 300 years. Therefore, even though there was a prompt from the Goldfinger, Jong Zan did not pay attention to it. He was still immersed in the comprehension of the yinyang secret technique. Mysterious Tao patterns rippled around his body, his aura changing, sometimes like a raging wave, sometimes tranquil and invisible. As a saint-grade inheritance, the power of the yinyang secret technique is unquestionable. When cultivated to its peak, it can even derive the heavenly mechanism and conceal one's fate, making it impossible for gods and demons to discern the truth. But precisely because of this, cultivation is naturally extremely difficult. Especially since Jong Zan does not have the corresponding power of the Great Tao to assist him in this inheritance, he can only comprehend it on his own, making the process even slower. During the time Jong Zan was in seclusion and cultivation, both inside and outside the Jong family, there was quite a bit of unrest. On the peak of the Jong family's ancestral mountain, in a magnificent hall, a group of elders gathered here. Their expressions varied, but their faces were filled with confusion. 70% of the top Tao lineages in the Eastern Divine Continent have all put a bounty on Jong Zan. This was within their expectations, and they even felt a bit of joy, thinking that Jong Zan's role as a scapegoat was effective. But they didn't expect that just 2 days later, the Desolate Heaven Divine Sect in the distant Southern Divine Continent would sternly warn all forces to protect Jong Zan. This completely caught them off guard. After all, Jong Zan had previously firmly rejected the marriage proposal from the Desolate Heaven Goddess. In response to this, they were once worried that it would anger the Desolate Heaven Divine Sect and lead to trouble for their Jong family. But they never expected that the Desolate Heaven Goddess and the entire Desolate Heaven Divine Sect would take an unusual approach. Not only did they show no signs of anger, but they seemed to lower their stance. What exactly is going on? Did Jong Zan, the young clan leader, drug the Desolate Heaven Goddess? Elder, given the current situation, do we still need to continue pushing Jong Zan to the forefront and attracting attention from all sides? An elder hesitantly asked. The other elders turned their gaze towards the elder. The elder looked troubled and hesitated for a moment before reluctantly saying, "We should continue with our original plan. But we must not let our guard down. Although various forces have probably guessed our intentions, at most they only suspect. As long as they haven't discovered who the monstrous prodigy with the reversion of bloodline is, Jong Zan, as a shield, will still be effective." Upon hearing this, the corners of the elders' mouths twitched. If even they didn't know who the monstrous prodigy with the reversion of bloodline was, how could those external forces find out? I wonder what this monstrous prodigy is thinking. Why does he insist on hiding himself while being in the Jong family? The third elder sarcastically remarked, "We are all part of the Jong family, sharing the same bloodline. Can we really harm him?" The elders all nodded in agreement, clearly feeling troubled by this monstrous prodigy's situation. The elder did not agree or show any expression. His eyes narrowed slightly, filled with doubt. He could actually understand the feelings of the monstrous prodigy. After all, there was fierce competition among the major branches of the Jong family. The monstrous prodigy had just experienced a reversion of bloodline and his cultivation had not yet improved. If he exposed himself too early, it would be difficult to guarantee his safety. After all, according to the information he had, there had been some recent actions by a few branches that had crossed the line. What he couldn't understand was why the monstrous prodigy, with a bloodline concentration of 95, did not actively compete for the position of young clan leader. And why did the ancestral mountain cover it up and use Jong Zan as a shield? After all, Jong Zan was also an exceptional genius with a bloodline concentration of 75, one of the young dignitaries of the Jong family. To abandon him like this, not to mention that Jong Zan would be disheartened, but the entire Jong family and many geniuses would probably be disheartened as well. To be honest, he couldn't understand. But for the sake of the Jong family's overall plan and future, he could only follow the ancestral mountain. The only thing he could do for Jong Zan was to pour in resources and ensure that as the shield of the young clan leader, he would have the resources and status that the young clan leader should have. And at this moment, an anomaly occurred in the sky above the Jong family. Boom! The vast sky suddenly shattered, endless darkness eroded and covered the daylight. As if eternal night had descended. Inside and outside the Jong family, countless people looked up in astonishment. What's going on? At this moment, from a certain dojo of the Jong Zan branch, a brilliant divine light burst forth, tearing through the eternal night and standing tall between heaven and earth like a pillar. Heaven and earth are heartless, treating all things as mere fodder. A series of vast and sacred divine sounds suddenly resounded, echoing for thousands of miles, shaking the minds of countless Jong family disciples, causing their 7 apertures to bleed. The elder and others' faces changed slightly as they flew out of the main hall and stood in the sky, probing with their divine souls. They saw a child who was less than 3 feet tall, with closed eyes and flowing white hair, stepping on the divine light pillar, walking leisurely upwards. Inside his body, there was a piece of pure gold divine bone, emitting a terrifyingly sacred aura. As the child walked, divine patterns surrounded him, as if he were a newly born deity. Divine bone. The crowd's pupils contracted, exclaiming in shock. Why did the anomaly occur again when it had already been concealed? The elder stared at the child, his face filled with worry. 10 days ago, the divine bone was born, causing a shocking phenomenon that alarmed the entire Eastern Divine Continent. Even the various sects in the Celestial Wonders realm had heard of it and paid attention to it. However, the divine bone possessed divine power and formed its own domain, blocking everyone's perception. Even in the Jong family, only a few people, including him, knew the true identity of the divine bone. In order for the divine bone to grow successfully, he secretly tilted resources to help it cleanse and strengthen its foundation. But unexpectedly, in just a few days, the divine bone erupted with another shocking phenomenon. Moreover, this phenomenon seemed even more sensational than the previous one. That freak who had a bloodline reversion has reached an extreme level of disbelief, even we don't trust him. This divine bone freak, on the other hand, frequently manifests its divinity and is extremely ostentatious. The elder shook his head helplessly. Can't these 2 freaks balance each other out and not be so extreme? At this moment, the child carrying the divine bone walked against the pillar of heaven, and every step blossomed with numerous profound truths, spreading throughout the Jong family. Countless members of the Jong family were blessed, sitting cross-legged and entering a state of profound enlightenment. Their auras surged, each one advancing. Among them were the geniuses on the verge of breakthrough, experiencing a sudden enlightenment, breaking through their limitations, and stepping into the next realm in one fell swoop. This is the divine preaching, blessing all beings. An elder recalled relevant records, his pupils shrinking as he exclaimed in surprise. The elders of the Jong family, as well as many hidden powerhouses in the void, were shaken, looking at the child with a gaze filled with shock and joy. Divine preaching, blessing all beings. This child carrying the divine bone's talent is probably far beyond their expectations. The elder's eyelids twitched, and he felt deep joy in his heart. Before this, he had indeed believed that this divine bone was a freak in the future pillar of the Jong family, but subconsciously, he still thought that his potential should be inferior to that freak with a bloodline reversion of 95. After all, the bloodline concentration of 95 was already comparable to a second-generation ancestor. If nothing unexpected happened, he would definitely grow to the same height as a second-generation ancestor and dominate the Celestial Wonders realm. But unexpectedly, this child carrying the divine bone contained far more divine and extraordinary power than imagined. The weight of the 2 freaks might need some adjustment, the elder secretly thought. And at this moment, the child carrying the divine bone had already reached the top of the pillar of heaven, sitting cross-legged, still with closed eyes, bathed in the radiant divine light. With every inhalation and exhalation, it seemed as if he was integrated with the integrated union of this world, and the circulation of the great Tao of heaven and earth was present in every breath. Under the eternal night, the extremely dense spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged like a dark tide, gathering around the child, forming a liquid spiritual energy sea. It could be seen that the divine bone within the child trembled, radiating a sacred brilliance, as if a giant hand slowly reached out, grabbing the spiritual energy sea and dragging it into the body. The entire process was brief and rapid, filled with shocking violence and dominance. The spiritual energy sea collapsed and compressed, transformed through the divine bone, and merged into the Dantian. Boom! The child's aura erupted like a volcano, shaking the sky. First level of body tempering. Second level of body tempering. ... Ninth level of body tempering. The astonishing speed of breakthrough was unfolding in this child who had just been born 10 days ago in a calm and peaceful manner. Countless people watched, but there was no shock, not even a slight fluctuation in their emotions. As if this was a matter of course. This was naturally not the normal reaction, but under the shining of the sacred light, such a reaction seemed to be the norm. The immense power of the divine spirit was superficially verified here. Even just a ray of brilliance, a trace of aura, could silently change everyone's perception and control their emotional fluctuations. Even the elder, who was already at the venerable realm, could not avoid it. And the protagonist who demonstrated the power of the divine spirit, the child whose cultivation was still continuing. The spiritual energy of the world, spanning thousands of Jong, is being devoured. In turn, it begins to devour the surrounding 10 li, 100 li, 1000 li. One after another, the sea of spiritual energy is forcefully dragged into the body, merging into the Dantian and becoming the fuel for cultivation. The breath of the child becomes visible, solid and heavy to the naked eye. Behind him, a hazy divine shadow gradually outlines its shape. A terrifying and sacred majesty gradually manifests. After about half an incense stick's worth of time. Boom! Between heaven and earth, a heavy rumbling sound emerges out of thin air, like a grand celestial sound, resounding through the pitch-black sky. It can be seen that at the child's Dantian, a hazy outline of the Tao foundation appears, and the sacred aura slowly spreads. Foundation building. The child's heavy aura instantly sublimates, transforming into foundation building, with a long-lasting charm. 10 days of foundation building, not to mention the celestial wonders realm. Even if you look across the countless realms, it should be a unique existence. Even the reincarnated daughter of the heavenly mandate, Nangong Mingyu, would find it difficult to reach. Of course, no matter which sect, the speed of foundation building is not considered a standard for talent. After all, with a massive amount of resources, even a pig can achieve foundation building in a day. Foundation building seeks quality, it seeks a solid foundation. The child clearly has already achieved perfection step by step, smoothly entering the foundation building realm. Through his sacred and heavy aura, it can be clearly perceived that his foundation building surpasses the majority of geniuses and monsters in the world. His divine bones are too terrifying. As everyone watches this scene, their hearts cannot help but exclaim in astonishment. However, this is far from over. Carrying divine bones, the child, like a newly born god, continues to cultivate, as if. Foundation building is not the end of this journey. At the same time, there is another person breaking through. Jong Zan. At this moment, Jong Zan has successfully comprehended and practiced the heavenly manifestation secret technique. His whole person appears ordinary, not to mention his bloodline, even his own aura seems to be non-existent. The feeling he gives is that of an ordinary person, the kind that would be lost in a crowd. At this time, Jong Zan takes out a spiritual medicine from his storage ring. Resembling a lingzi mushroom, it is flowing with enchanting blood, exuding a domineering and tyrannical aura, rippling with a faint dragon's might, and surrounded by layers of mysterious Tao patterns, extremely extraordinary. It is the reward for ranking first on the points leaderboard, the Tao Medicine Dragon Blood Lingzi. A dragon blood lingzi, it should be able to help me break through the limits of my cultivation realm, right? Jong Zan murmurs. Without any hesitation, he summons the intent of the fire Tao, refining the dragon blood lingzi into liquid, and then swallows it in one gulp, beginning the process of refining and breaking through. If the ancient ancestor were to see this scene, he would probably be shocked and take action to stop it. After all, the terrifying medicinal power of the king's medicine is already unrefinable without reaching the profound earth realm, let alone a Tao medicine. Tao medicines are formed by the power of heaven and earth, containing immense Tao energy. Even in the Tao fusion realm, one can only slowly refine them bit by bit. Jong Zan is still in the nascent soul realm, yet he directly swallows the entire Tao medicine. According to common sense, he would probably be instantly turned into a pile of flesh by the immense Tao energy in the Tao medicine. But how could Jong Zan be measured by common sense? The indestructible thunder body spontaneously activates, countless profound thunder patterns swirling around, fortifying his physical body, resisting the impact of the Tao medicine's immense Tao energy. The Jong family's bloodline, with a concentration of 95, flows vigorously. Under the brilliant blood color, profound and mysterious Tao rules surge, like a domineering and ferocious gluttonous beast, greedily devouring the liquid of the Tao medicine, rapidly refining it, and nourishing Jong Zan, pouring into his dantian. In the dantian, Jong Zan's originally jade-like Tao foundation cracks, and the refined liquid rushes in through the cracks. Crack, crack, crack. Clear sounds of shattering come from the dantian. Jong Zan's Tao foundation shatters. This is the process of breaking through the limits of cultivation. First, the original Tao foundation is abolished, and then a new and more powerful Tao foundation is forged. Imagine, how could a Tao foundation cultivated with the foundation of body tempering compare to a Tao foundation cultivated with the foundation of entering the divine realm? There is a world of difference between the two. However, this method is extremely dangerous. If one is even slightly careless, their Tao foundation will shatter, backlashing and causing them to lose their cultivation, as well as damaging their innate talent, turning them into a waste. At that time, Nangong Mingyu was just like that. However, Jong Zan's foundation is extremely profound. What seems to be a dangerous self-destruction of the Tao foundation is as simple as eating and drinking for him. After all, Jong Zan has long since broken through the limits of the physical body and the divine soul. The backlash from self-destructing the Tao foundation is like scratching an itch for him. When the Tao foundation shatters, the chaotic energy erupts like a volcano, radiating in all directions. But Jong Zan remains unmoved like a mountain. Even the fragile dantian does not tremble in the slightest. This is the horror of breaking through the limits of the physical body. At this moment, Jong Zan activates his divine soul that has broken through the limits, manipulating the chaotic energy, intertwining and integrating with the majestic spiritual liquid, and then quickly weaving and stacking, constructing a new outline of the Tao foundation. Although it is only an outline, it is more than 100 times larger than the previous Tao foundation. With the outline of the Tao foundation in place, the next step is the process of filling and solidifying. The way of fire, sword intent, and the great way of thunder, all three are thrown in. The Tao foundation instantly solidifies, revealing the profound textures of the three great ways on its surface. The Jong family's bloodline with a concentration of 95 is also thrown in. The Tao foundation completely solidifies, showing an ancient meaning, faintly revealing a sense of divinity. The entry-level Tianyan secret technique, the preliminary understanding of the Taiji Palace diagram, the 5 elements reversal holy array, and the combat insights of a true genius, all thrown in. The Tao foundation undergoes another transformation, with numerous patterns on its surface, like living creatures, forming a vivid picture. Terrifying and mysterious supreme aura surges and overwhelms in all directions. If it weren't for the concealment of the Tianyan secret technique, this aura alone would awaken all the ancestors sleeping in the ancestral land. In fact, reaching this level, Jong Zan has long since broken through the limits of cultivation and forged an unparalleled Tao foundation. But Jong Zan is not satisfied. He still has a strand of the true inheritance of the ancestor. Jong Zan hesitates for a moment. Although he has only grasped a strand of the true inheritance of the ancestor and has not reached the level of comprehension, with the terror of the ancestor's inheritance, it should also be able to enhance the Tao foundation, right? Immediately, he throws it in as well. An unexpected scene unfolds. Crack, crack, crack. The unparalleled Tao foundation unexpectedly cannot withstand this strand of truth, and cracks appear, just like when the Tao foundation self-destructed earlier. Jong Zan is dumbfounded. What the hell? He knows that the ancestor's inheritance is terrifying and can be called the highest, but he never expected that just a strand of truth would be so terrifying. The unparalleled Tao foundation he just forged cannot withstand it. Jong Zan quickly activates his divine soul, struggling to manipulate the unparalleled Tao foundation and resist it. But the effect is minimal. The unparalleled Tao foundation is still shattering, terrifying energy overflows. The Dantian is also unable to resist, violently trembling as if it is about to collapse. Even Jong Zan's physical body, under the impact of this terrifying energy, begins to shake. Jong Zan's current situation is extremely precarious. Jong Zan's face darkens, unable to help but curse. Why is it that whenever something happens to him, it always develops in a strange direction? Just when Jong Zan is at a loss, the strand of truth from the ancestor's inheritance undergoes a change. It occupies the center of the Dantian, resembling a black hole, exuding the aura of time and space, forcefully drawing back the overflowing energy and the shattered unparalleled Tao foundation, incorporating them all. Then, it falls into silence, without any fluctuations. For a while, the Dantian is empty, with only the black hole occupying the center, rippling with layers of obscure special ripples, permeating through the Dantian, spreading rapidly from Jong Zan's physical body to the surroundings. Hungry. Very hungry. This is the message conveyed to Jong Zan by the black hole. Jong Zan was a bit confused, but subconsciously took out all the precious materials and treasures from the storage ring, 100 plants of king-grade medicinal herbs, and even more rare and spiritual herbs. He refined them all into spiritual liquid and swallowed them, pouring them into the black hole. Hungry. Still hungry. How did things turn out like this? Jong Zan felt somewhat helpless. He had exhausted his resources and could only absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth along with this special ripple. 10 li, 100 li, 1,000 li. The ripple quickly spread throughout the entire Jong family, including the domain of the Divine Bone Child. Buzz. The spiritual energy sea that the Divine Bone Child had seized instantly dissipated and all entered Jong Zan's Dantian. The child's closed eyes wrinkled slightly, feeling somewhat strange. However, he did not open his eyes but instead activated the Divine Bone, greedily seizing the spiritual energy between heaven and earth. But it was gone. He was still weak and could only barely activate the Divine Bone to seize the spiritual energy within a radius of thousands of miles. But now, the Divine Bone unexpectedly gave feedback. The spiritual energy within a radius of thousands of miles had been completely devoured and would take some time to regenerate. The Great Era has not yet arrived, and the world is barren. It can be understood. The child muttered to himself, "Forget it, I'll use the energy left in the Divine Bone from my past life to break through into divinity." Yes, he had the Divine Bone as a companion, and he awakened the memories of his past life because of the Divine Bone. This was also the reason why he was able to achieve foundation building in 10 days. Of course, with the support of his past life memories, what he pursued was not just foundation building in 10 days. He wanted to achieve divinity in 10 days. In his past life memories, there was detailed information about a mysterious realm of true gods, which contained the necessary divine objects for his cultivation of the great divine ability in this life. That true God was the one he had slaughtered in his past life, and the realm was also formed under the guidance of his past life. Everything was for the smooth cultivation of this great divine ability in this life. On the day of his birth, when he awakened his memories due to the anomaly of heaven and earth, he was able to temporarily manipulate the power of heaven and earth and sense the aura of that true God's realm. In his perception, that true God's realm had already appeared and would open soon. Although he was only in the early stage now, he had inherited his past life memories and had the Divine Bone, so obtaining the necessary divine objects was not difficult. The premise was to break through into divinity. Only by achieving divinity could he initially control the Divine Bone and use some of the methods from his past life. Immediately, the child activated the Divine Bone, and 10 strands of pure golden energy surged out from it. Although the quantity was not large, the quality was extremely high. After all, this was the energy of a god. Using the energy of a god to break through into divinity, even in my past life, I never had such luxury. The child shook his head and self-mockingly said. Then, without hesitation, he tried to activate a strand of divine energy, refine it, and inject it into his own Tao foundation. But just at this moment, that strand of divine energy suddenly and mysteriously disappeared. The child was stunned, and his closed eyes twitched, almost unable to resist opening. He inherited the memories of his past life and decided to cultivate the great divine ability of the Thousand Laws' heavenly eyes. Once this divine ability was cultivated, it would be no less powerful than the techniques of a quasi-emperor and could become the foundation of his path in this life. Of course, such a powerful divine ability was naturally difficult to cultivate, with many restrictions. Not to mention the necessary divine objects, there were a total of 9 different kinds. Just the restrictions alone were enough to deter anyone without great determination. Do not open your eyes. Before the Thousand Laws' heavenly eyes' divine ability was cultivated, all the energy of the great Tao was gathered in the eyes. If they were opened before cultivation, the energy would leak out and all efforts would be in vain. The divine energy from his past life disappeared before his eyes without warning, almost causing him to curse out loud. Who the hell did this? It's so despicable. Although divine energy was important and precious, it was far less important than the great divine ability he was cultivating. The child did not investigate who had stolen his divine energy but directly summoned another strand, ready to refine it. He knew what was urgent and what was important. The person who stole his divine energy would be dealt with in the future. But another unexpected incident occurred. The second strand of divine energy also disappeared inexplicably, without any signs, just like the previous situation. The child became angry. Once, twice, it's going too far. Activating his divine bones and empowering his soul consciousness, he began the search. The divine energy contained the aura of his past life, allowing him to easily locate the position of the divine energy. Even if it was the realm of a venerable, it couldn't be concealed. But the situation seemed to have once again gone beyond his control. His soul consciousness covered the entire Jong family, searching back and forth 3 times, but there was no trace, as if it had already been swallowed and digested completely. But this was absolutely impossible. That was the divine energy from his past life. Besides him, even a true god might not be able to instantly refine it. Who could it be? The child's eyelids twitched violently, itching with anger. After an unsuccessful search, the child could only temporarily give up. He summoned another strand of divine energy. The same result occurred again. Summoning another strand, it disappeared abruptly once more. After a total of 9 strands, the child looked at the last strand of divine energy in his divine bones, feeling numb. No, did I offend some senior? Are they tormenting me like this? The child was furious, but helpless. He had to break through to the divine realm now in order to have the confidence to enter that mysterious realm of true gods and obtain the necessary divine object for cultivation of the great divine ability. There was no way he could give up. Sigh. The child sighed lightly, gritted his teeth, and summoned the last strand of divine energy. Although his eyes were still closed, he stared fixedly. Congratulations. This time, it didn't disappear. The child immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and the resentment in his heart towards the person who stole his divine energy dissipated somewhat. As long as he broke through to the divine realm, if the divine energy was wasted, it would be of no consequence. Immediately, the child didn't hesitate and quickly refined the soul formation spiritual energy, pouring it into his dantian. Buzz. A sacred radiance burst forth from his body. His cultivation soared like boiling water, rapidly increasing. Second level of foundation building. Third level of foundation building. Ninth level of foundation building. He was just one step away from entering the divine realm. In the eyes of everyone in the Jong family, there were no exclamations or dropped jaws, just silent observation. Is he going to achieve divine enlightenment in 10 days? Even if they searched through the ancient books of the celestial wonders realm, they probably wouldn't find anything as terrifying as this. But when they thought about the fact that he had a piece of divine bone in his body, as if a divine spirit had been reborn, everything made sense. A newly born divine spirit achieving divine enlightenment in 10 days, is there a problem with that? At this time, in the dojo where Jong Zan was located. We are all from the Jong family, sharing the same bloodline. Let's leave something for others. Jong Zan rubbed his chin and muttered to himself. Indeed, all the strange disappearances of the child's divine energy were related to Jong Zan. More precisely, it was the black hole in his dantian that did the trick. That hidden special ripple, containing the power of time and space, greedily plundered the 9 strands of divine energy from the child's hands. There was no other way. It was too hungry. This kind of high-ranking energy like divine energy naturally aroused its strong desire. The 9 strands of divine energy surged into the black hole. The silent black hole finally moved, slowly rotating in the center of the dantian, connecting layer upon layer of ripples, as if containing some kind of supreme order and principle. The black hole started to rotate, and Jong Zan's cultivation finally returned to his body. Foundation building stage. Second level of foundation building. Third level of foundation building. ... Sixfold spiritual transformation. Ordinary and unremarkable, without any fluctuations, his cultivation reached the 6th level of spiritual transformation as if it were a natural process. Everything seemed too simple and casual, as if it were just going through the motions. Jong Zan was a little confused. His divine soul sensed the black hole in his dantian, filled with astonishment. Has he truly laid an unparalleled foundation? I suppose so. Jong Zan muttered, this thing easily crushed the Supreme Tao Foundation, it's really powerful. After reluctantly accepting that his Tao Foundation had become a black hole, Jong Zan recalled the entire process and couldn't help but sigh, the ancestral inheritance is truly amazing. I guess I've benefited from this misfortune. Jong Zan chuckled. But Jong Zan seemed to have forgotten that his script has never been smooth sailing. Buzz. The curse totem on his forehead emitted a pitch-black divine light, piercing through the sky. Boom. The eternal night sky suddenly gathered dark clouds and accumulated boundless thunder. The terrifying aura of destruction ravaged the heavens and earth, causing everyone in the Jong family to look up in astonishment. Is this a tribulation? Recently, it seems that no one in our clan is trying to break through the heavenly origin realm. The elder recalled the clan's records and couldn't help but feel puzzled. Coincidentally, at this moment, the child also completed his breakthrough. Buzz. Sacred golden radiance shot through the sky, illuminating the entire Jong family and attracting everyone's attention. They saw the child's figure grow to 5 feet tall, shining with dazzling brilliance. Countless patterns and divine symbols surrounded him. He looked like an unparalleled young deity, and his cultivation had reached the divine embodiment realm. The child calmly stood up, slightly raised his closed eyes, and looked at the surging tribulation. He frowned slightly, wondering why he would attract a tribulation just by breaking through to the divine embodiment realm. This scene was understood by everyone present. So, it was this person who triggered the tribulation. It should be noted that even the geniuses in history only triggered a tribulation when breaking through the heavenly origin realm. But this person only broke through to the divine embodiment realm and already attracted the fear of heaven and earth, bringing down a tribulation. The horror of his divine bone was unimaginable. The elder's mind trembled, his eyelids twitched, and he was filled with shock and joy. With such a divine bone prodigy in the Jong family, why worry about not regaining the past glory and reclaiming the celestial wonders realm? The weight of the divine bone must be further increased, perhaps it can surpass that prodigy who returned to his bloodline. The elder secretly decided. At this moment, Jong Zan also walked out. He fully activated the heavenly manifestation secret technique to conceal himself, so no one noticed his presence or detected anything unusual about him. A tribulation. Jong Zan gazed at the cloud cover obscuring the sky, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. This bloodline curse is truly malicious. Others only attract tribulations when breaking through the heavenly origin realm, but because of the curse, he broke through to the spiritual transformation realm and actually brought about a tribulation. Fortunately, I have the heavenly manifestation secret technique to conceal myself, otherwise this transcending tribulation would have been completely exposed. Jong Zan felt fortunate. He didn't care about the tribulation. With his current foundation, transcending a spiritual transformation level tribulation was as simple as can be. What he was worried about was exposing himself. Breaking through to the true God realm within 300 years was already hellishly difficult. If his talent was discovered and numerous enemies sent people to target him, then he would truly have no way to play. Immediately, Jong Zan no longer hesitated and directly flew into the tribulation clouds. The black hole operated on its own. Although it wasn't as hungry as before, it still wouldn't let go of any food it encountered. Special ripples spread out. The thunderous energy in the tribulation clouds instantly dissipated. Even the source of the tribulation, the thunder liquid stored in the void, was uprooted and taken away. It came fast and left just as quickly. Jong Zan was like an assassin, leaving in an instant. On the other side, although the child was surprised that he had triggered a tribulation, he didn't think much of it. With his strength, transcending a tribulation was too easy. Then, the child rushed towards the tribulation. But in the next moment, buzz, the tribulation dissipated. The child's movements froze, hovering in midair, looking bewildered. What's going on? But in the eyes of the Jong family members, it was a young deity, exuding a mighty aura, causing the tribulation to fear and retreat. Everyone's minds were instantly shaken, filled with excitement. The divine bone was amazing. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.